Okay, as promised, say no play. Let's get this sacred geometry movie, man. This is that spirit science. This is an old drop. And it's one of the checkpoints here at Drop Nation because we have a good time watching these little, funny talking guys, man. But, check out that human history movie. We might have to check that out again. The Crystal movie's pretty dope. This is what I put on, man, when I just really want to fall back and, see where they taking this, man. But we know that they all, intertwine in the thoughthisms, so they'll take it to that raw thought stuff in a second, so watch out for that. But dodge your own damn hijack, because Tide Battle told you that. All right, let's fall back. Let's just enjoy a nice flow with Spirit Science, man, number 23. The Sacred Geometry movie, man. I'm going to see, man, what it do, man. All right, now let's just see what it do, man. Of course, we touched on a lot of this, and so, it's good to see it for the first time, like it's the first time, with a 360-degree dragon flit eye perspective, man. So fall back, sacred geometry. Go. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait. I messed it up. I need to go all the way back. I need to go way back to the beginning of time. Hold on, man. How can I get? Hold on.
Don't believe or disbelieve anything we discuss in spirit science. Simply have your own experience. Better get some popcorn ready. This one's going to be pretty long.
All right.
Back in the late 1700s, early 1800s time period, there was a social movement liberating the modern world from the reign of control that religion and superstition had on the people. Essentially, after our darkest part on the precession of the equinox, we were really beginning to wake up. Started making new inventions that were rapidly changing the world. The industrial era was beginning. Because of this, we began to see that maybe religion as an answer was not in our best interest. And so the movement happened. We turned to science instead to answer our questions about the universe. The only problem with this was that we grouped in many things with superstition that we probably shouldn't have. Things like consciousness, intuition, human connection, paranormal phenomenon. All of it went right out of the door with superstition, when in fact we've proven these things today to be real. So after 200 years of just going with the same idea about what's classified as superstition and what's okay to talk about, mainstream science is still going with the assumption that consciousness is just a part of the brain. They don't know how it works, they don't have a single rational explanation for it, but they keep on believing it. Why? Well, when we tossed superstition out of the door, even talking about it became taboo. It's just not done. Literally, the reason that it's tough talking about this stuff in the mainstream scientific community is because that's just the way science has been for 200 years. They won't have any of it, even though there are scientific institutions that prove that theory wrong. The field of noetics and the works of biologist Rupert Sheldrake and his colleagues have more than proven mass consciousness exists and is definitely not a part of the brain. Now, no disrespect to the scientific community, but that assumption that we're still holding on to has not gotten us anywhere. It's time we begin to question the decisions of our ancestors, because many of the things that we've been led to believe to be true simply is not. I'm not saying blindly accept all of the new stuff that's coming out nowadays, but we should at least put it on the table and be able to discuss it as a global community. One other thing before we get this rolling. I want to give an overview about what sacred geometry really is. Sacred geometry is the geometry of consciousness. It revolves around the idea that all consciousness, including human, is solely based on sacred geometry. Because it is, we can begin to see and understand where we have come from, where we are now, and where we're going.
Yeah. We just talking Platonic solids, man.
The universe is infinite. It has no beginning and no end. In both science and religion, creation is often discussed from a perspective of having a set or a specific beginning. In science, we call it the Big Bang. This is the theory that says everything in the universe was compressed to the point of a single, infinitesimally small particle, something we would perceive as unity, and then rapidly exploded and expanded outwards and created everything in the universe. In religion, it is generally called creation. When God, or some all-knowing and all-seeing entity...
So who's their God? Who's their God? When they mention the creator, they put this raw on them, right? You know what I mean? Dodge your own damn hijack. So they say, when they get into this, it gets real hermetic, you know what I mean? They get real trigomagistus on you, you know what I mean? There ain't no beginning, in religion, this is called, you know what I mean? So... all right, I'm just, I'm I'm just pointing out the obvious. Let's go.
Being the only one imbued with such power, created everything, presumably in 6 days, before taking a well-deserved day off. Let's take a step outside the box for a second and put these two sides of this cosmic coin into a Vesca Pisces. As usual, the two enemies that never got along actually have quite a lot in common. Both say that the universe started with unity and expanded outwards. Both say that light was an important factor in creation as well. If at the beginning of the universe we were one essence and somehow became everything, then both are saying the same thing, that we came from the same source. But wait a second, how can we make sense out of that statement, the universe is infinite, if we are measuring it from a sense of having a beginning? And this is what we're going to talk about now. If we value the pursuit of knowledge, we must be free to follow wherever that search may lead us. The free mind is not a barking dog to be tethered on a 10-foot chain. Today, I want to talk about two specific energies that can be expressed through this image. The energy that flows here is male and female energy. Male energy is focused, and female energy is creative and random. Neither of them is greater nor weaker than the other, and both can be extremely powerful when fully manifested. Female energy is the land of unbridled possibilities, creative potential, and affecting the universe from within. Focused male
all possibilities, it's all happening. Let's go.
Energy takes direct roads from point A to point B. This energy can be as strong as a tank, accomplishing tasks and going where it needs to go with precision and without distraction. The important thing to know about this energy...
So when they say it's focused, it's like it's being observed. It's almost like it's collapsing a wave pattern, right? So with the male energy, there's more collapsed wave patterns. It's like, no, I got to get from here to there, right? Here's my goal, bing, bow, bing, bow. It's all like, I see one possibility, let's go. You know what I mean? And the female energy, again, this has nothing to do with, you know what I'm saying, what so-called sex you are. You know what I mean? Am I a guy or a girl? It's not about that when it comes to energy. You know what I mean? You know, what they call female energy is just creative, you know, expansion. Like, you know what I mean? Like an expanse of creativity, you know? It's all happening. All points are in play. You know what I mean? All points are in play. You know what I mean? So, you know, there's many other examples of this, but just know it's all happening. And when you have one that it's all happening and one is just a focus point, you know, this is where the balance comes into, because yeah, it's all happening, but it needs to be focused. And yeah, it needs to be focused, but still remember, it's all happening.
Isn't how they move. I'm going to use some super basic sacred geometry to demonstrate this. This is the Fibonacci spiral. We're going to be talking a lot more about it when we dive into the topic. For now, all you have to know is that it starts at 1.
So that's the 9. You know what I mean? The Fibonacci spiral is the 9. All right? That's why it's hitting all the points. That's why it's connected. That's why it's spiraling out. This is not the number 8, right? The infinity sign, right? The infinite sign. Because that's just a loop. You're just looping around and around. You feel me? This represents your creator. That spiral of life represents your creator. That spiral that you see in the pine cone and the sunflower and your hair, all that is representative of the natural, right? The creation, the creator. Let's go. Free Phineas, 5.
And flows outward forever in a very specific way and is present in all life everywhere. As male energy flows through the spiral, it goes from base point to point, from here to here, to here to here. It doesn't curve. It just goes straight where it needs to be. Female energy, however, would flow in the actual spiral. It would go around, going in and around outside all of the lines, but still getting to the same or similar results. This is the graphic representation of how it flows, but it also acts in the same way. From this understanding, you can see how we use these energies in our lives. It's the difference between driving straight to work and being on schedule all the time, and taking the scenic route because it's a more pleasant ride, even if it means being late. It's baking a cake strictly by what it says in the cookbook, and putting it together with what just feels right. It's getting that promotion for working the hardest, and getting that promotion for coming up with the best ideas. Here's a relatable example. It's the difference between Inception and Sucker Punch. Both about dreams, but one of them being the masculine story of professional men just doing their no-nonsense work, trying to get the job done, and the other being the feminine story that was creative and random and, according to many, didn't make much sense. Both male and female energy, like the chakras, have their own traits. Male energy is linear, analytical, strategic, and practical. However, when male energy is constricted, it is very blundering and confrontational, and what tends to occur is not seeing all sides of a situation, or not being open to any other possibility other than the one being pursued. You can see a lot of that in today's society. Most commonly, we call it being closed-minded. Female energy, on the other hand, moves in curves. It does not stay inside the lines. It is creativity and movement and expression and emotion. It can do anything and go anywhere, but it has trouble sticking to schedule. If constricted, it can get out of its flow, running rampant between emotions and mood swings and ideas. The creativity could get jumbled and come out as an out-of-control mess. We don't have this widespread issue in today's society, and it has a lot to do with our brain hemispheres. We're going to look at that in a moment. One big difference between the two is that male energy looks at parts and female energy looks at wholes. Before I go on, I want to make this clear. Male and female energy has very little to do with sexual orientation. Like, it's in the mix, but it's not a fundamental part of the energy itself. For example, if you look at the shape of male and female bodies, men have straighter bodies, women have curvier bodies. We'll probably come back to this in a lesson down the road. Okay, brain hemispheres. We have two of them, and if you remember what you learned in grade 10 biology, this will be familiar. The left brain is the male energy side of the brain. It is orderly, statistical, logical, and mathematical. It sees things in straight lines, rational and practical. The right brain is the female energy side of the brain. It is our creative side, a free spirit. It is passion and experience of taste and feeling, movement and art. As is the same with the energy, the left brain cannot make sense out of the right brain. You cannot put feelings and expressions within boxes. They must be felt to be truly experienced. The right brain, too, cannot make... This will be familiar. The left brain is the male energy side of the brain. It is orderly, statistical, logical, and mathematical. It sees things in straight lines, rational and practical. The right brain... This will be familiar. The left brain is the male energy side of the brain.
My bad. I just want you to look at this. It almost looks like, what you see today, right? Just more of a stale type of, atmosphere. Think skyscrapers, think New York City, think, downtown LA, like just this is an image of what they're trying to paint of what's going on with our energy, right? And we all know that all energy ain't created equal. Not everyone got the same energy, you dig, same frequency. So someone's trying to push, more of a left brain reality on us, And again, it got really nothing to do with being a man or a woman, right? It's just the reality of the energy that you're in. So they also said that they found us, and that we were like a young woman in our consciousness, or however they tried to explain it, like we were like little girls, and then they were like an old man that came on us, pretty much violated the little girl, that's pretty much how they was painted, because this old man energy is this stale, no creativity, just war, destruction, and this female energy was just paradise, just creativity, just being one with nature and just flowing, going with the flow. So there's different ways, but when you see these little ways that they're depicting it in their artwork, you just kind of see what's really going on. They're pushing a certain type of energy on us, and they're getting us looped into this energy.
Brain. It is orderly, statistical, logical, and mathematical.
That's how
it
they
sees
move,
things
right?
in straight lines,
That's how they
rational
move.
and practical. The right brain is the female energy side of the brain. It is our creative side, a free spirit.
Right. That's how they found us. Party, paradise, a free spirit, man. Just break it down for a second. You was a free spirit, man. Spiritually free. Passion, yearning, sensuality. I am the sound of roaring laughter, man. You had roaring laughter in paradise. Can you dig it? Let's go, man.
It's passion and experience of taste and feeling, movement and art. As is the same with the energy. The left brain cannot make sense out.
All right, so one of them you see flowers, trees, motherfuckers just enjoying the sun, flying kites. What do you see on the left, right? You see little cubicles, right? Niggas at work just losing, right? That's how we got to do this, to try to think about because one day I want to be here. So I'll do this because one day I want to be here. But they found you in paradise, my naga, and this is our reality today. This is our reality today, man. Hijack City. It's a frequency war, and we got to choose up. We got to choose this. This is our reality. This is our inheritance. We just have to observe.
out of the right brain. You cannot put feelings and expressions within boxes. They must be felt to be truly experienced. The right brain, too, cannot make sense about how the left brain understands things. Okay, so as a species, we are primarily left-brained. Well, incredibly left-brained. This basically means that as a species, we essentially have a male energy imbalance. There is way too much of it. It is dominant.
Who are they talking about? We're not the same species, right? So they're talking from their thoughtish, and their own species point of view. This is how they come out, the gate. Angry, trying to strangle the creativity out of the creator's seeds. You're the seeds of the creator. You are creative. They're talking about you. You're the little bitty doll, baby girl, that's being squeezed and choked out by this angry ass, whack ass hijack. And this is how they, he just gave you all the rap. This is how we are. This is what we do.
Logical, and mathematical. It sees things in straight lines, rational and practical. The right brain is the female energy side of the brain. It is our creative side, a free spirit. It is passion and experience of taste and feeling, movement and art. As is the same with the energy. The left brain cannot make sense out of the right brain. You cannot put feelings and expressions within boxes. They must be felt to be truly experienced. The right brain, too, cannot make sense about how the left brain understands things. Okay, so as a species, we are primarily left-brained. Well, incredibly left-brained. This basically means that as a species, we essentially have a male energy imbalance. There is way too much of it. It is dominant and is constricting on the female side of the brain. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, but we have to talk about some other things first. Everything in the universe is geometric, whether it's people, trees, cats, planets, solar systems, stars, you name it. Anything in the universe can be measured on a geometric scale. Having said that, it's important to note that creation is also geometric. What we're going to be looking at today is the pattern of creation. Essentially, what this means is that everything in the universe comes out of this single pattern. I'm not making this up. This single image will change everything. When I mentioned in Lesson 5 that the ancient Egyptians and even more ancient civilizations knew about a deeper, basic understanding of the universe, this is the flower of life, and it is also the creation pattern of everything in existence. Even non-tangible things, emotions, thoughts, music in its entire spectrum, everything comes from this image. Okay, so there are 13 information systems that comes out of the flower of life. Today, I'm going to show you how physical reality can manifest itself, which is just one of the 13 systems. In future lessons, we will look at more. It's also important to note that at first it may not make sense. I ask that you do not choose immediately to shut this out, and just watch with an open mind, and try and see this in a new way. Also, I want to tell you that by learning about sacred geometry simply by observing, you are absorbing only a very minuscule amount of information. If you really want to learn more, you must begin to draw it yourself. I kid you not, when you do this, you begin to see things in a new way. You begin to understand why things are done in the way that they are done. Promise. The flower of life was known around the world in ancient times. It was found in Ireland, Turkey, Israel, Egypt, China, Greece, Germany, India, and Iceland. It's also been recorded to have been found in England, Tibet, Japan, Sweden, Lapland, the Yucatan, and I think 14 other places. This thing is everywhere. Not only that, but everywhere around the world it has the same name, the flower of life. Now, to understand the flower of life, first we have to talk about how it's formed. This could get incredibly complex, so I'll try and keep it simple. Imagine consciousness, or spirit, floating in a void, which means it's nothingness.
That's
and then
the
spirit.
hijack.
No physical body or mind, just spirit, and that's it. Then blackness, essentially nothing, all around the spirit, for infinite. Spirit decides to do something, so it expands its consciousness all around itself as far as it can go without moving. It creates a sphere around itself. This is the first circle in the flower of life. Then, spirit has an awareness of what's around itself in 360 degrees. It moves to the very edge of the sphere anywhere and repeats what it did the first time. It creates this image, which also creates the Vesica Pisces. Within the Vesica Pisces is a vast and incredible amount of knowledge about width, proportion, depth. Also comes the square roots of 2, 3, and 5, which are all numbers that go on forever. But even more interestingly, comes geometric information about light. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now, spirit has no choice but to do it again. Spirit is flawless, and therefore it will move flawlessly, creating the next circle either here or here, exactly one radius away from the other circle next to it. Every time spirit moves another sphere, more and more knowledge comes out of the image that is created. The first complete image to be formed is this. It has two names, the seed of life, or the Genesis pattern, and for good reason. Now, let's look at the book of Genesis for a second. Each of these movements, or creations of circles, can be seen as another day. On the first movement, the second sphere, it created knowledge about not only mathematical proportions, but light. The first sentence of Genesis says, "The earth was without form and void, and that the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. In the very next sentence, God says, let there be light. The key here is in the order. The movement happened first. Then light happened immediately after. Well, but what about the waters? Well, you have to remember that the Bible has been changed over time a lot. The ancient Egyptians would say that the way our modern Bibles begin creation is impossible, especially if you think about it from a physics point of view. Imagine a dark, infinite space that goes on forever and ever in all directions. You're just floating there with nothing. You can't really fall, but where would you fall to? From a purely physics or mathematical point of view, motion itself, or kinetic energy, is absolutely impossible in a void. You can't even rotate, because motion cannot become real unless there is one other object in the space around you. So the ancient Egyptians would say that before God moved upon the face of the waters, it would first have to create something to move relative to. So, Genesis pattern, after 3 spheres, you get the Holy Trinity. Another interesting one, it says in many Bibles of the world, not just the Christian Bible, that on the 4th day of Genesis, exactly 1/2 of creation was completed. Starting from the first motion, exactly 1/2 of the circles were formed on the 4th day. 5th day of Genesis, 6th circle, more information, and then on the 6th day, a geometric miracle takes place. The last circle forms a complete 6-petaled flower. This is what many earlier Bibles meant when they said, in the beginning there were 6. Our Bible even said creation was formed in 6 days, and this fits exactly. This is the pattern of Genesis, and so it's called the Genesis pattern. It's also the beginning of the creation of the universe that we live in. These original movements of spirit are really important, but now let's look at something even cooler. Another image that comes out of this pattern is this. It's called the Tree of Life. Many may recognize this as the Jewish or Hebrew Kabbalah, but the Kabbalah did not originate this image, and there is proof. The Tree of Life does not belong to any culture, not even the Egyptians, who carved the Tree of Life on 2 sets of 3 pillars at Karnak Temple, Luxor, over 5,000 years ago. It's outside any race or religion, as with all of these images. They are patterns that are intimately connected with nature. You'll also notice that every circle on the Tree of Life is either the length or width of the Vesica Pisces. The second image beyond Genesis in the Flower of Life is the Egg of Life. This is formed during the second vortex motion. Upon its completion, it creates an image like this, a 3-dimensional shape that you can hold in your hand. If you were to connect their centers, you would see a cube. So what? Who cares? Well, the ancient Egyptians did, because they were concerned with creation, life, and death. They called this cluster of spheres the Egg of Life. You probably won't believe me just yet, but this shape is the morphogenic structure that created your body. Your entire physical existence is dependent on the Egg of Life structure, and everything about you was created from that form. Everything from your eye color to how long your fingers are. This is a whole lesson on its own, so let's move on for now. All around the world, the Flower of Life was always made the exact same way. See, this pattern can clearly go on forever. However, they always stopped after 19 circles. Why? Well, because they didn't want you to see what I'm about to show you. Back then, this image and knowledge was so sacred that they couldn't allow it to become common knowledge. It was appropriate at that time. However, now we either use the information or fall further into darkness. In biology, all cells have a zona pellucida around the edge. These circles around the Flower of Life are the zona pellucida of the Flower of Life. You must remove these. Then, complete the spheres that were cut off by the zona pellucida. With one more step, you will have the secret. Finish the drawing, add the final missing circles, giving you this. This image is the fruit of life. This pattern of 13 circles is one of the holiest, most sacred forms in existence. It's called the fruit because it is the result, the fruit, from which the fabric of the details of the reality were created.
Man, it almost looked like the pomegranate, huh? And you got these 13 tribes, with the tribe of Moshe, or however you want to break it down. And it's a lot coming out of that, man. I mean, that's why I wanted to, kind of fall back. As you notice, I'm really trying to fall back, and just let it flow and see where the water takes us, They try to act like, oh, well, the waters can't be significant because there's this void thing. So they try to put you back in science a little bit. They just don't understand the water. It might be a little unbelievable to you when you know that you're surfing the wave. The wave is the mem. We are talking about creation, not the creations. And in this case, you got the creator's creations, trying to put it together. And you are trying to, return to your ancient love song so you can see through the original spiral, the original fruit, man. And again, man, that fruit looked just like that pomegranate, man. Let's go.
All cells have a zona pellucida around the edge. These circles around the Flower of Life are the zona pellucida of the Flower of Life. You must remove these. Then, complete the spheres that were cut off by the zona pellucida. With one more step, you will have the secret. Finish the drawing, add the final missing circles, giving you this. This image is the fruit of life. This pattern of 13 circles is one of the holiest, most sacred forms in existence. It's called the fruit because it is the result, the fruit from which the fabric of the details of the reality were created. Remember when we talked about male and female energy, lesson 4? As you can see, this image is female. It has no straight lines. However, when you combine male lines with these female circles, something amazing happens. What you do is draw a straight line from the very center of every single circle to every other circle in this image. When you do this, you get an image which is known throughout the universe, everywhere, as Metatron's cube. It is one of the most important informational systems in the universe, one of the basic creation patterns in existence. So what is Metatron's cube? Well,
you see how it's all about Platonic solids? I mean, even when they, did the little pomegranate stem, and out came these Platonic solids, right? And that's when you get into this dragon frequency, and that's what you got to know and understand about frequency and vibration, man. And how you know your tribe by this crystallization, this vibration, and everything they're calling it. They got all kind of names for this particular Platonic solid, you know what I mean? But, Metatron's cube, okay, well, you got the tetragrammaton, you know what I mean? You got a Merkaba situation going on. I mean, a lot of power generated, when you know how to connect the lines, connect the dots, separate things together, man. When you can separate the frequency, man, you can, really spark up some shit, if you know what I mean. Let's go.
Well, anyone who has studied sacred geometry, or even regular geometry for that matter, knows that there are 5 unique shapes in the universe, and that they are crucial to understanding both regular and sacred geometry. They are called the Platonic solids. A Platonic solid has certain characteristics by definition. First of all of its faces are the same size. For example, a cube, the most well-known Platonic solid, has a square on every face, so all of its faces are the same size. Secondly, the edges of the Platonic solids are all the same length. All edges of the cube are the same length. Third, it only has one size of interior angles between the faces. In the case of the cube, this angle is 90 degrees. And fourth, when put inside of a sphere, all of the points will touch the edge of the sphere perfectly. With that definition, there are only 4 shapes besides the cube that fit that description. So what are they? Well, we have the dodecahedron, the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the isosahedron, and the hexahedron. All of these shapes are found within Metatron's cube. This knowledge is also where original alchemy came from. The ancient alchemists and great souls like Pythagoras, father of Greece, considered each shape to have an elemental aspect to them. The tetrahedron was considered fire, the cube was earth, the octahedron was air, the isosahedron was water, and the
Hey, yo, love to the Templar, man. I mean, Templar broke down a great, man. Just go subscribe to Irvin Reed, man. He got he got some drop on the metallic dragons, the gold, silver, copper, on, and how that connects with Platonic solids, which is given, put on full display in the old game board, classic Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons got little dice that you roll that look just like these Platonic solids, because they're connecting this Platonic solid frequency, dragon frequency, with the actual dragon, Dungeons and Dragons. So when you talk about comets and shooting stars, oh man, I saw one fly right over my crib last night, man. Real spill. Beautiful. Flash. Bang. You know what I mean? Now you start to recognize this stuff. And you're only talking about Platonic solids, man. You're only talking about the actual building blocks. They're breaking it down for you right in your face bone. Fire, water, air, earth. I mean, they're breaking the elements down. This is what the avatar is. So in the movie Avatar, you got your dragons, you got your sacred trees, right? You got your dreadlocks, right? Connecting to the animals, right? Yeah, man. Avatar, man. The last Avatar. You're only talking earth bending, right? Earth bending, fire. You know what I'm saying? Controlling the water. Man, controlling the ether, the air. So there's dragons that connect to all these different flows and, get that last drop, because the reason why they're eating your dragons is because they're getting this life. They're getting these Platonic solids, man. They're getting the ether. They're getting the fire, the water, the earth. So the transference of your inheritance is more than just the earth. It's the fire. It's the water. They take it all. They're not just making treaties for your land. They're doing it for the water, man. For the air, for the ether, for the fire. So go check out Dungeons and Dragons and see what kind of dice they rolling. And you're going to see they look just like these Platonic solids, and love to Irvin Reed for pointing that out. And go subscribe to the bro. Again, back it up, man, one time. For your dragon mind, man. Real spill, man. This is dope.
90 degrees. And fourth, when put inside of a sphere, all of the points will touch the edge of the sphere perfectly. With that definition, there are only 4 shapes besides the cube that fit that description. So what are they? Well, we have the dodecahedron, the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the isosahedron, and the hexahedron. All of these shapes are found within Metatron's cube. This knowledge is also where original alchemy came from. The ancient alchemists and great souls like Pythagoras, father of Greece, considered each shape to have an elemental aspect to them. The tetrahedron was considered fire, the cube was earth, the octahedron was air, the isosahedron was water, and the dodecahedron was ether. Ether, also known as prana, and tachyon energy are all the same thing. They accept.
Ooh, wait, hold up, man. Hold up. It's getting good, right? It's getting good, right? Love to the Templar. Man, I got to do this, man. Just right quick. I know y'all too lazy, man. You ain't going to do this, man. Dungeons. How you say? Oh, there we go. I need Dungeons and Dragons. Give me that. Oh, man, give me that. And I want to see playing pieces. Dice. I don't know. I mean, I can't make this shit up, man. Y'all thought it was play. Yeah, y'all thought it was play, man. I'm trying to get a good picture, man, so everyone can see clearly. I mean, I know you can see clearly already, man. You see what I'm getting at? Oh, man, let's see. Let's see, I guess. I don't know, man. This one might make sense. All right. Any questions? Look at the playing pieces. Any questions? Before there was just a bunch of shapes on this stuff. Now you see the dodecahedron, the hexahedron. You see you see the cube, right? So even when you look at the whole Saturn and Saturn's cube and the whole cube that they walk around in Mecca, you know what I'm talking about. But you know what I'm saying? Even with all that, they're just using elements. It's just elements. It doesn't make the cube evil. It's just that's what they're tapping into to get their power. But when you put them all together, you got the full dragon. So they're just using elements of the dragon, right? These are all elements of the dragon. Remember, man. Oh, man, I scrolled down pretty far. Yeah, man, we're just talking Dungeons and Dragon playing pieces, right? We're just talking the Dungeons and Dragon playing pieces. Dungeons and Dragon playing pieces. Do you know of any other games with playing pieces like this, per se? This is dealing directly with the dragon. So when we're talking fire, water, ether, all the stuff we've been digging on in draconology, man, look out, man, in the ether. We'll be back live November 15th. Enjoy the replays, enjoy the flow. I'll still be dropping in on the real ones, man, live in full effect. Don't even trip. And just I appreciate all y'all support. Become a dragon sponsor on the wall and keep just keep the water flowing for the tribe, man. Support the drop shop, support the flow. Hey, hop to you. Let's go. Yeah, all right. Platonic solids. We just talking platonic solids, Templar. Platonic solids, man. Platonic solids, man.
This angle is 90 degrees. And fourth, when put inside of a sphere, all of the points will touch the edge of the sphere perfectly. With that definition, there are only 4 shapes besides the cube that fit that description. So,
any questions? Okay. Dungeons and Dragons.
What are they? Well, we have the dodecahedron, the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the isosahedron, and the hexahedron. All of these shapes are found within Metatron's cube. This knowledge is also where original alchemy came from. The ancient alchemists and great souls like Pythagoras, father of Greece, considered each shape to have an elemental aspect to them. The tetrahedron was considered fire, the cube was earth, the octahedron was air, the isosahedron was water, and the dodecahedron was ether. Ether, also known as prana, and tachyon energy are all the same thing. They extend anywhere and are accessible at any point in space, time, and dimension. This is the great secret of zero-point technology. The sphere is voidness. These 6 elements are the building blocks of the universe, and they create the qualities of the universe. To summarize, this is the first informational system that comes out of the fruit of life through Metatron's cube. In alchemy, they rarely discussed ether. I've read that in the Pythagorean school, if you even uttered the word dodecahedron outside of the school, they would kill you on the spot. That's how sacred this shape was. 200 years later, when Plato was alive, he would discuss it, but only very carefully. This is because the dodecahedron is near the outer edge in your energy field, and is the highest form of consciousness. There's quite a bit more here, but I don't think I can go much further on it right now. Anyways.
So, are there any dodecahedron amethyst crystals? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's when you start getting into that power. You know what I mean? It connects direct with the ether, though. That's pretty noble. You know what I mean? Let's go.
Recognize this? The periodic table of elements? Every single element on this table has a geometric relation to one of these 5 shapes. Modern scholars ridiculed this idea until the 1980s, when Professor Robert Moon at the University of Chicago demonstrated that the entire periodic table of elements, literally everything in the physical world, is based on these same 5 forms. In fact, throughout modern physics, chemistry, and biology, the sacred geometric patterns of creation are being rediscovered. Another example is the egg of life that I showed you earlier. Hopefully that will help you to understand just how incredible and important of a discovery this truly is. We have 5 Platonic geometries that form everything in creation, but we don't have a hexagonal shape. If we look at the flower of life, we see that its ultimate basic form is in a 6-pointed shape, called a hexagon. Want to see where else hexagons form in life?
Who was here 20,000 years ago?
Hijack City.
On the continent.
Hijack City. And keep in mind when they talk hexagon, right? So, you know what I mean? It's like you got to empty your cup on everything, you know what I mean? And just know that they're tapping into these Platonic solids. They're tapping into the creator, however they can get there. So they'll tap in through, you know, the hexagon, right? Or the hexagon must be bad. You know, this shape, cube, must be bad. You know, the Star of David is exactly what we're talking about here. You know what I mean? It's the same, you know, Merkaba design. You know what I'm saying? So you're only talking the flower of life. You're only talking the flower of life when you talk Star of David. You know what I mean? So all this is energy. You can't look at it from a 2-dimensional perspective. You know what I'm saying? However, you know, you got to get it. You truly got to get an understanding of it. You know what I mean? Before you just start playing with symbols and doing all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? They're tapping into it specifically. So, you know, I would say, you know what I'm saying, dodge the hijack of trying to, you know, follow anybody's specific path to tap into this type of energy. You know what I mean? All this is given to you from within. You know what I mean? This is a within flow. You know what I mean? So this is your design. Your life is your design. Everything you're learning over here or anywhere is what you have already, you know what I'm saying, you know, just related with, you know, previously to connect to. You know, this is stuff that you're interested in because you are already related to it. There's a relation going on, you know, unconsciously that we keep talking about when they kept saying, you know, you can communicate subconsciously and all that kind of stuff. You know, being telepathic, that whole thing, being able to communicate direct through the ether, all that. It's a relation that we all have. You know, this is what you're tapping into. So how this is experienced with you is already something that you relate to at the proper times. You don't have to go out of your way to try to really, you know what I'm saying, understand anything, because everything that is in your path that you've already related to, you're going to relate to. You know what I'm saying? I can only talk about this if I'm relating to it on some energetic level at some particular point. You know what I mean? This can't be no new, you know what I'm saying, information to any of us. You know what I mean? That we are already related to it. It's a relation we got with truth. Let's just simplify it. We have a relation with truth. So when you talk about Platonic solids, flower of life, these are just elemental factors of truth that they're breaking down from a hijack perspective. They're just trying to gain understanding. They're just trying to figure this shit out. You know what I mean? But remember, they're left brain, so they're going to put it together a certain type of way. Even the spirit science cat is going to put it together a certain type of way, because he's not truly just going to surf the wave. You know what I mean? So you're getting it, whether you absorb it from left or right brain. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get it, and you're going to get what you relate to at the proper time as it relates to whatever this time thing is or whatever this wave is. You know what I mean? We just surfing the wave, man. So you see hexagons are everywhere. So they say, oh, there's a hexagon around Saturn and this, and it must be something with this hex. Hex is 6 and cursing is, you know what I mean? There's hexagons everywhere, bro. Like, you got to take back all your shapes. You got to take back all your days. You can't give no Saturday to Saturn, man. Did the creator give Saturday to Saturn, or are they just hijacking a day, tapping into a frequency? They playing chess, not checkers. They're playing chess with hexagons, man.
We have all of these hexagons, and yet there is no Platonic solid that is formed with a hexagon. So, what gives? Well, I want to introduce the vector equilibrium, which was coined by Buckminster Fuller. It is actually formed from 3 two-dimensional hexagons that swivel around each other, and its basic shapes that make it up are an equilateral triangle and the square. These are the 2 smallest shapes that you can make with straight lines, and together they balance at each other's corners to create the perfect shape. Why is it the perfect shape? The reason is that every single line which is connected in this shape is the same distance away from every other point, including the very center of the shape itself. Not even the Platonic solids have that definition, which also makes this the most stable shape and polyhedron, and the basis of the 3-dimensional flower of life. Finally, the only reason it's not a Platonic solid is because it has both squares and triangles within it. Platonic solids are Platonic because each face is the same, which makes me think that other shapes must exist that are balanced between 2 different shapes as well, and construct everything in the universe. Now, in the comments or end credits, depending on where you're watching this, I posted links to a TED Talks video by Garrett Lacey, a particle physicist who tells us of an amazing discovery in the scientific field. I want to show you and talk about his findings, and then we'll look at dimensions after that. Okay, so Garrett has discovered that by examining coral, they found that each coral head has thousands of different polyps. These polyps are constantly budding and branching into genetically identical neighbors. Through performing heat experiments on these polyps, they were able to find that every single polyp is part of a whole, a single unit of being, but each one is experiencing its own reality individually. From their findings with the coral, they were able to look at quantum mechanics. See, the mathematics of quantum mechanics shows us exactly how our universe works.
Whoa. Now, ain't there trees like this? Then we do a drop, and there was like the trees, a lot of them in Utah, and they're the oldest organism, they said, on Earth. And it's these trees that they look like a bunch of individual trees, but they're really all connected with the same roots. So they're really the same tree, you know, kind of like dreadlocks, right? You got one head, but a bunch of locks. So all the locks are having their own experience, but they're all connected. At the end of the day, they're all just the same head, right? All the same frequency. That's what it is with me and my Nagas, you know what I'm saying? We all got our individual experiences, journeys, you know what I'm saying, flow, whatever. But at the end of the day, we're all the same Ahchwa. We're all the same breath of security. We all been put here, you know what I'm saying, to, you know, secure the premises, you know what I'm saying, to glorify our creator. And this is, I mean, over and over again, our creator puts it clearly in our face how we rocking, man. We rocking like the coral, you dig? We rocking like the coral.
I posted links to a TED Talks video by Garrett Lacey, a particle physicist who tells us of an amazing discovery in the scientific field. I want to show you and talk about his findings, and then we'll look at dimensions after that. Okay, so Garrett has discovered that by examining coral, they found that each coral head has thousands of different polyps. These polyps are constantly budding and branching into genetically identical neighbors. Through performing heat experiments on these polyps, they were able to find that every single polyp is part of a whole, a single unit of being, but each one is experiencing its own reality individually. From their findings with the coral, they were able to look at quantum mechanics. See, the mathematics of quantum mechanics shows us exactly how our universe works, and we see that everything in the reality is just continually branching into new possibilities.
And we know that with quantum mechanics, the most infamous experimental study in quantum mechanics is the double slit experiment or two slit experiment, whereby observing a particle, the particle performs much differently. When you don't observe the particle, trying to figure out which slit the particle is going into that's being shot off, it has to choose one of those two slits. They shoot out the particle, electron, proton, neutron, whatever they're shooting. It don't matter, because when they're observing it, it's behaving as they would expect it to. It's going through one of those slits. When they don't observe the particle, it hits the complete wave pattern. They see a complete wave pattern. All possibilities when they're not observing. And we said, well, what happens when we're not observing? All possibilities take place. And then we got even more specific and said, what happens when we don't observe the commandments? When we don't observe the commandments, all possibilities take place, including your demise, right? So we've created a hell, right? Like we've created a reality that this is even possible, to not have land, to be the tail, not the head, to be in captivity. We created that by not observing. We created all possibilities. All possibilities ain't necessarily a good thing. When all possibilities are in play, man, think about the best, think about the worst, right? We want a particular possibility. At the end of the day, you do want to observe because you want to collapse the wave pattern in a favorable place. You don't want all possibilities in play per se, unless you were a master and can access specific portals or vortexes within them all possibilities to make sure you don't end up in all bad scenarios. Wakey, my naga. We're in an all bad scenario. You're behind enemy lines, dog. The enemy has encroached on you, my naga. They've collapsed all possibilities because they're observing something. You need to observe your creator's flow, your creator's law, your creator's infinite reality of how to rock on this earth and with each other. Then you can collapse the wave pattern of paradise.
Just like the coral. As humans, we are individually
just like the coral. Let go.
Experiencing only one of these possibilities, much like the individual polyps. What physics is telling us is that everything comes down to geometry and the interactions between elementary particles. Things can happen only when things are perfectly balanced. So Garrett starts showing us some subatomic particles and the things that make up electrons and protons and neutrons. We always consider these to be the smallest particle, but we never think about what's creating them. Garrett demonstrates to us how the particles that create point particles really work. He shows that when you plot them out in how they move, this is what they look like. At the tiniest scales of the universe, and how it works is very beautiful. Now, look at this. This is one of the ways that these charges branch off from each other. As you can see, it flows in a hexagonal pattern, the same pattern that we found in the expanded flower of life. Then, if you rotate this pattern in six-dimensional charge space, you see it forms yet another pattern. Many of you will recognize this as the shape of the Star of David, but its true name is the star tetrahedron, which maps perfectly over the fruit of life. This entire pattern created by
the star tetrahedron. All right, write that down. So, whether our people is aware or not, when they're rocking the Star of David, they're rocking the star tetrahedron, right? So, is star tetrahedron evil? What did star tetrahedron do to you? Is this putting you under a spell? The star tetrahedron? I mean, hey, it could be all kinds of combinations, man. But when you're just talking about the flower of life, of course they are definitely tapping into it, right? We know that for sure. But again, we're breaking it down, to the moleculars, man, to the simplest form, man, to try to, get some understanding within ourselves about what the frequency war is all about. So when you talk sacred geometry, you're just talking about dragons fighting in the sky. But remember, you are the sky. So whatever's being, whatever war is waging in the ether is waging inside of you. Whatever war is raging in the ether is raging inside of you, man. All right, that's why we are, digging on the inner stand.
Particles is mapped across over precise places on a 200-dimensional spherical shape scientists have called E8, of which also has a geometric shape. By rotating that shape as well, you can see how there are nearly infinite possibilities as to how these elementary particles interact with each other. The details of the reality begin to take form. Now, as this shape is rotating in 8 dimensions, you can see a myriad of different patterns here. Look at this one in particular. This looks a lot like Metatron's cube, doesn't it? At the heart of particle physics is pure, beautiful geometry. By now, you probably can begin to see where sacred geometry falls into this. Where do these shapes originate? Do they just come into being at random? Or does the first shape come from somewhere else? In Lesson 6, we talked about the flower of life, the original, perfect geometric symmetry that created the universe. This shape, as we learned, is not only the root of all mathematical proportion, light, the Platonic solids, but is also the source of every musical system in the universe, including systems both used and unknown to modern man. It is also the source of energy patterns and, well, everything. It all comes from the flower of life. I believe this is what is at the heart of what's forming every subatomic particle formation, and it probably goes at least a few levels deeper than what Garrett is showing us.
Curtains closed.
5. Also,
now we're going to go into the golden ratio, but before, just, again, dodge your own damn hijacks, as I keep trying to say, well, this is what created everything. You know what I mean? These are folks that don't believe in a creator, right? Because they don't believe that they are on the right side of things. So they'd rather believe that all that is insignificant. These are just experiences. We're just, divide and conquering each other and all this stuff like that. Nah, nigga, we really been at war this whole damn time. This is not no make-believe, you know what I'm saying? It's make-believe to you because you want to live in a situation where we ain't in the hood getting ran down and tracked down on, and this ain't a tribal war. That shit is as realer than a mofo, baby. I don't care if it's a simulation or not. It's real enough, you know what I mean? Because it's happening to us, you know what I mean? It's our reality. So now we're saying, okay, we need to observe something, right? Which is the laws of our creator that puts us back into a whole nother frequency, a whole nother reality, right? Because if you're in a whole nother reality, you're in a whole nother frequency. We have to ether up. Most folks say, back to the Malcolm X days, you know what I mean? Just, hey, man, you know what I'm saying? Get your strap, hit the streets, let's go. Now that's one possibility, you know what I'm saying? But there's another way to ether up, you know what I'm saying? That you don't have to do it in a 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional way. There's another way to ether up that can, when you ether up like this concerns the Platonic solids, man. When you ether up the way that we're doing, the way that we are choosing up, it's affecting the volcanoes, right? It's affecting the dragon layers, the second Baruch 73. The dragons are rising out their hole. The Platonic solids are in play. We're ethering up. So you don't technically have to pick up a shovel or nothing, you know what I'm saying, until the creator tell you to, you know what I mean? Other than that, just let the ether flow, man. Because they were afraid of your dragons, Jack. Your dragons was fucking these people up so much that it's in every single culture. You know what I mean? So they're afraid of the Platonic solids. They're afraid of the energy. So they want to keep us, even keeping us mad and fear, that's keeping us from ethering up. That's what they're afraid of because they can't meet you there. That's the greater light. That's beyond the Hermes and Trigonomegastices. It's the greater light when you can ether up and get in this full dracon flow. You know what I mean? This Platonic solids, fire, water, air, ether, you know what I'm saying? Earth, all the combination, the avatar, the trees rise, the dragons rise, the earth rise, all the animals fight with you. You back to the Queen Khalifa flow. You back to the Solomon, right? You back to the David flow. That's your reality too. But they keep us distracted, right? All the social media stuff, all this, you know what I mean? We're just trying to learn, trying to put it together, but we're all distracted from ethering up. Even wanting to fight them, even mad at them. That's why they, you know what I'm saying, keep taking our brothers and sisters right in front of us, right? Because they just want us to be mad, just mad enough to jump and go crazy so that we're still not ethering up. None of us is saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep Shabbat. You know what I'm going to do? You know what I'm saying? I'm going to peace up with my bro, and I'm going to get some land, and we're going to, you know, plow that field, man. You know what I'm saying? We're going to start making these, you know, decisions to choose up and tribe up. Now, when Phineas rises up, man, out of Fort Tryon, man, I'm talking 5. I said when Phineas rises up, I'm talking 5. I'm talking the golden mean ratio. Free Phineas. You see what I'm saying? It goes all the way back to the basics when you talk 5, 9, Phineas. Let go.
Known as the golden ratio, or golden mean, is a very simple relationship. If you had a rod and were going to put a mark on it, only 2 places would mark the phi ratio, which is here or here. The length of A plus B is equal to the length of C. This ratio is 1.6180339 and continues on forever. If you multiply the length of C with phi, it will create the exact same image, only bigger. C and D is equal to E. This ratio could then span on forever, going smaller and smaller or bigger and bigger forever. This ratio is infinite. It has no beginning and no end. It is also believed that phi is the mathematical root of all other sequences. See, every mathematical sequence in existence needs a minimum of 3 numbers to figure out the sequence. Phi only needs 2. It is the only one. Similar to how the circle and square are the source of all shape, but we'll get to that later on. The next thing that you need to know is that this ratio is found in all life everywhere. Sort of. By sort of, I mean it's really Fibonacci, but we'll look at that in a moment. Look at your hand. Not only does each finger have its own ratio moving up each finger, which is phi to the next bone, but it oscillates back and forth from the tallest finger to the thumb. You wonder why the human hand is like that? It's based on phi. This relationship is found throughout the body in various ways, moving up the arms and legs, in your face, throughout the entire body. This is a Greek statue that accurately represents this. The Greeks were very precise when they made their art, because they understood phi, Fibonacci, and the importance of these sequences. When the Romans took over Greece, you could see the perfection in statues just completely disappear. I'm not saying the Romans were bad artists. They just didn't measure everything to the same caliber that the Greeks did. Here is the phi ratio in butterflies. You can see this ratio everywhere, from the wing size to the body to the antennas. They're all phi ratios. Here's dragonflies. It's the same story. Phi runs along the entire body, and the relation to the body and the wings. Here it is in frogs. Phi is found throughout the body, in relation to the head, to the arms, to the fingers, and so on. Well, what about fish? You'd think they wouldn't be found in fish. Well, here's 3 kinds of fish. Once again, the ratios are consistent. It doesn't just apply to these creatures, though. Regardless of what mammal, insect, avian, plant, or living creature of any kind, you will find this ratio one way or another. There's a reason for this, but we'll get to that in a moment. Let me show you the importance we used to place on this golden ratio. In ancient times, we built many structures based on phi because we understood divine proportion. This is the pagoda of Yakushiji Temple in Japan. It's built with these same mathematics, from the doorway to the ball on top of the temple. It is a structural embodiment of the proportions that all life holds. The Parthenon in Greece also has the exact same mathematical structure, but even more. I recommend watching Nova's Secrets of the Parthenon if you wish to learn more about this, because the stuff that they find is really cool. The Great Pyramid in Giza also has these proportions. They're incredibly precise, perfect in every way. You'd think that by building these structures using the logical and mathematical proportions so carefully, they would hinder the creativity behind these buildings, but they really don't. In fact, the left brain understanding all of this can even enhance creativity if used correctly. It makes me wonder about all of the world-famous buildings of the modern world. Could phi be a large factor in what makes them stand out? Let's move on to our next sequence, which is called Fibonacci. Now, the Fibonacci sequence is life's way of creating the golden mean. Allow me to explain. This sequence is continually made from adding the previous number to the current. 1 and 1 is 2. 2 and 1 is 3. 3 and 2 is 5. 5 and 3 is 8. You can see how it continues. Now, what most people don't know about Fibonacci is that it actually continually strives closer and closer to the phi ratio. By dividing the current number into the last, you can see this happening. 1 into 1 is 1. Well, that's not close at all. 2 into 1 is 2. This time it's over phi, but closer. 3 into 2 is 1.5, which is under, but closer still. 5 into 3 is 1.666. This time it's over, but even closer. Continuing with that, it's 1.6, and then 1.625, 1.615384, 1.619048, and so on. It continually oscillates over and under the phi ratio, never quite making it there, but continuing on closer and closer every time, until eventually you can't even tell the difference. Because phi is an infinite number, this sequence will go on forever. Let's look at some spirals in nature, another way that phi and Fibonacci can manifest. This is a nautilus shell. Many people will say it's phi, but it's really Fibonacci. See how when it's in its earliest form, it's crude, not smooth or anything? One look and you can tell that's not phi. But as it goes out farther and farther, it gets closer and closer to phi. It becomes a nearly perfect phi spiral by the time it's all the way out here. This also happens with sunflowers, pine cones, and many plants in nature. In many cases, such as the pine cones and sunflowers, it flows in a double spiral or more, much like the spiraling arms of a galaxy. From the microcosm to the macrocosm, spirals are always present. So phi is basically source, or spirits, or God, in a mathematical way of thinking. The math of God. Don't forget that this sequence is an intimate part of nature itself. I'm going to call it source. It is the source of all mathematical sequences, and all life in existence grows based on phi. However, phi has no beginning and no end. Life doesn't know how to deal with that. It's like source says, go and replicate this, and life says, we don't know how. Because life doesn't know how to create from something that has no beginning. So it creates the Fibonacci sequence instead, which has a beginning, but starts out crude, very basic, and then continually goes closer and closer to source, becoming more divine every step. It does take steps too, which actually has quite a bit to do with evolution. Let's move on for now though. The only other sequence you need to know for this is binary sequences. This is a sequence like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. We're just doubling the last number instead of adding it to the previous one. We're all very familiar with this. Binary sequences are found in life as well. For example, mitotic cell divisions are binary. We go from being a single cell being to having over 100 trillion cells in only 46 divisions. Binary sequences are also how computers work, by turning on and off chips. Computing at its core, anyways, is binary. This is how a polar graph usually looks, with 36 radial lines in 10-degree increments, representing the 360 degrees. Then, concentric circles are drawn, each with the same distance away as the last, creating 8 equal demarcations as the one before, counting the inside circle as 1. Think about what this represents too. It's a two-dimensional drawing of a three-dimensional sphere, one of the sacred forms, by projecting it onto a flat surface. This is also called a shadow form, and casting shadows is a sacred way to obtain information. Also, a polar graph has both straight, male lines and circular, female lines, both male and female energies interacting at once. If you plot a golden mean spiral at 0 degrees on the polar graph, it will loop all the way around before hitting 0 again, exactly at the 8th circle. You'll find that this golden mean line crosses 5 specific places as it goes out. These places are where the female circular lines meet the male lines.
I just gotta hit this again. Let me hit this again.
Usually looks, with 36 radial lines in 10-degree increments, representing the 360 degrees. Then, concentric circles are drawn, each with the same distance away as the last, creating 8 equal demarcations as the one before, counting the inside circle as 1. Think about what this represents too. It's a two-dimensional drawing of a three-dimensional sphere, one of the sacred forms, by projecting it onto a flat surface. This is also called a shadow form, and casting shadows is a sacred way to
Casting shadows is a sacred way to what?
obtain information.
Obtain information. Casting shadows. Casting shadows is an ancient way. I just want to hear the way they said that, man.
Usually looks, with 36 radial lines in 10-degree increments, representing the 360 degrees. Then, concentric circles are drawn, each with the same distance away as the last, creating 8 equal demarcations as the one before, counting the inside circle as 1. Think about what this represents too. It's a two-dimensional drawing of a three-dimensional sphere, one of the sacred forms, by projecting it onto a flat surface. This is also called a shadow form, and casting shadows is a sacred way to obtain information.
Casting shadows is a sacred way to obtain information. That's deep. I just want you to dig on it, man. That's deep.
Also, a polar graph has both straight, male lines and circular, female lines, both male and female energies interacting at once. If you plot a golden mean spiral at 0 degrees on the polar graph, it will loop all the way around before hitting 0 again, exactly at the 8th circle. You'll find that this golden mean line crosses 5 specific places as it goes out. These places are where the female circular lines meet the male lines. It crosses at 120 degrees, 190 degrees, 240 degrees, 280 degrees, and then it jumps to 360, or back at 0, depending on how you look at it. What's interesting about this is that it creates both a binary and Fibonacci sequence. Looking at the radial increments from the center, it crosses at 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8. Well, that's Fibonacci, but it also crosses at 2, 4, and 8. Well, that's a binary sequence. We're going to look at the binary sequence in particular, though, because what you find is very cool. If you draw lines from the outermost circles on the lines where the binary sequence was formed, you get this image. It is an equilateral triangle. If you continue the spiral outward, it would continue to hit these exact same places and continue to form larger equilateral triangles. Let's divert yet again to look at something very interesting. There was a man named Keith Critchlow who discovered something very important to understanding the geometry of music. First, he drew a straight line through an equilateral triangle, and then he measured from the middle of the center line and drew a straight line up to the top edge and back down to the bottom corner. Then he did the same, but passed through the center line of the top and back down again. He did this yet again on the other side. You can keep doing this on either side as well. By drawing this funny little form, he discovered something of great importance. He writes, continuing in this way, each successive proportion will be the harmonic mean between the previous proportion and the total length, and all of these proportions will be musically significant. 1/2 being the octave, 2/3 being the fifth, 4/5 being the major third, 8/9 being the major tone or step, and 16/17 being the half tone or step. In other words, he discovered the geometries of music, or at least one aspect of them. Then he tried measuring it in a different way, starting at a different point of the center line. At 3/4, he found the measurements were 1/7, 1/4, 2/5, 4/7, 8/11, and 16/19. All of these numbers are musically significant. This is very interesting. It means that the harmonics of music are somehow related to the proportions of the central line moving through a tetrahedron. Back to the polar graph, you can see that this drawing has a much greater value all of a sudden. Not only that, but it becomes even easier to make your measurements thanks to the polar graph itself. You can just draw a straight line through the drawing on the graph, and it will give you the center line. This information has been taken light years beyond what I just showed you, though. A research team found that you can draw these lines not only from the center, but from any nodal points inside the upper half of the triangle, and you will come up with all known harmonics in existence. Basically, this means that anywhere the straight line and curved lines on the polar graph cross from 0 to 120 degrees and start making the pattern, you will come up with all known harmonic systems. Not only the Western keyboard, but the Eastern, and even many unknown systems that have never been used. As I'm not a musician, there's not much more I can show you related to this, but I would love to see what a musician could really do with this knowledge. Remember when we talked about spirals in nature? They often travel in twos. Usually this is male and female. So on this polar graph, if you're going to copy nature, you don't just plot one spiral, you have to plot two. When you do that, it gives you this image, which is a star tetrahedron inside of a sphere. We mentioned this in Lesson 7, and this image is more commonly known as the Star of David. Do you remember the face on Mars? NASA obviously tells us that it's just a random formation on the surface of the planet. But right next to the face, there are also a few pyramids and other anthropomorphic structures. I know what you're thinking. Why on earth would I bring that up all of a sudden? Well, Richard Hoagland and his colleagues have spent a long time researching and deciphering a message on the surface of the red planet. Want to know what that message was? It was a star tetrahedron inscribed in a sphere. Holy balls, right? It's pretty crazy, and very eye-opening now that we have this information about what this really means. Inside the star tetrahedron, another one fits perfectly. We can continue to put more and more star tetrahedrons inside or outside of the other star tetrahedrons, the same way the golden mean spiral can wrap around the polar graph infinitely big or infinitely small. You'll notice that this smaller tetrahedron also happens to fit perfectly around this sphere. Well, check this out. If you put this same size sphere centered on the point of every single star tetrahedral point, guess what suddenly reveals itself? It's back. According to the Egyptians, this is one of the holiest, most sacred forms in existence. Of course, we already learned one of its informational systems in Lesson 6, and what you just saw was the second, only in reverse order. What this means is that all of the information of music, harmonics, sound, and spirals come out of this image. Not only that, but light and the dimensional levels work in the same way as harmonics, which we've already discussed in Lesson 2, 7, and 9, meaning that the geometric information about light and dimensions are also related to this star tetrahedron pattern. So what you just saw was the second unraveling from the third rotational pattern of Genesis, the geometry at the heart of creation. Now we can start talking about dimensions. These wheels are some of the oldest symbols known. The only places that they've been found is on the ceilings of certain very old Egyptian tombs. They are always found in sets of 4 or 8, and nobody knows what they are. Even the most famous Egyptologists have no idea, but this is actually proof that the Egyptians not only understood the flower of life, but they lived it. Today, I'm going to show you what these wheels meant, and in future lessons, we will go over the details of this unraveling. There's a lot to cover before we get there, though. For the record, the unraveling looks like this. Yeah, it's a doozy. So on the walls with these wheels are drawings of 7 people with animal heads. They're called neiters, and each of them has an orangish-red oval above its head. This is called the egg of metamorphosis. The neiters are showing us a time when we go through a certain stage of resurrection, which is a rapid biological change into a different life form. Not the average type of resurrection, I know. As you can see here, they're changing directions 90 degrees, and in doing so, they're changing dimensions. See, the dimensional levels are separated by 90 degrees. Musical notes are separated by 90 degrees. The chakras are also 90 degrees. It's a number that continually appears. Probably at this point, we should get a common understanding.
So we're just talking octaves, you know what I mean? And this is not necessarily Egyptian drop. This is just, you know what I'm saying, sacred knowledge, you know what I mean? Abraham, you know, Abrahamic, however you want to call it, you know what I mean? But this is just ancient drop. This is ancient drop from Mu. This is ancient drop from Atlantis. This is just ancient knowledge. So he's just talking octaves, you know what I mean? So don't get, you know, scared or spooked out because, you know what I mean, they're talking netters, you know what I mean? They didn't invent, you know, every, beginning of information, you know what I mean? You got to, you know, point back to the homeland, man. You got to sing that ancient love song, man. And that's where they're going to find you, right? The so-called Negro. That's where they're going to find you, man. All right? This is tribal, man. All right? This is tribal flow. All right? You over here, just know you're digging on it with our tribe. We kept the tribe from day one. I mean, just check out the comments, you know. Even though they block hella comments, so please keep dropping your drop because YouTube doesn't let me see most of the comments. But just check out the flow always. I don't care if it's a lot or a few. It's always just tribal, man. I don't have a lot of wing wham over here. I get that out of here. I get that out of here. You know what I'm saying? I drop that off. They get dropped off in light speed, if that existed, man. If that existed, love to natural by law. If light speed existed, they get dropped off like light speed, man. And y'all make sure y'all tune in after, you know what I'm saying, on November 15th when we get back in that Ether Live, Natural by Law, every Wednesday, man. The Naturalist, man, 10 o'clock Pacific. Just enjoy just the more crystallized vibration every time. That's all we can do. That's all we can promise. All praise our Creator. So yeah, they're just talking octaves. So when they go up to 90 degrees, right, they're in another octave. That's what we said. When you're in that 432, when you double it, you're in that 864. That's another octave. It's another octave. I mean, these are just different ways to look at the same thing. So they're just going up octaves. Let's go.
Of what dimensions are, like third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension. What are we talking about here? Most people think of dimension in terms of time and space, the X, Y, and Z axis, with time becoming the fourth dimension. This is not what we are talking about. What we're seeing as the various dimensional levels has more to do with music and harmonics than anything else. A piano has 8 white keys from C to C, which is the familiar octave, and in between there are 5 black keys. Together this creates what is called the...
Look how important music is, man. Hey, look, man. You know what I'm saying? Music, sound, vibration is everything. It's everything. Law is vibration. Vibration is law, man. How Khan say it best, man. Law is vibration. Vibration is law. Music is everything. You know what I'm saying? So, again, that's why we, you know, all praise our Creator had a design from the top to tune our music to this, you know, back into this spiral, so-called Fibonacci, right? Back in the spiral, back in the 9. So now that we're in the 9, we can hit all the octaves. Before you was cut off from the top 4 because the music coming out is all tuned to 440 and it only hits the 8 lower octaves. It doesn't hit the top 4. So you never reach beyond the barrier, right? They talking thought all day. You never reach beyond the greater light. You know what I'm saying? Because you're in a light code frequency lockdown. And Dr. Phil Valentine, Ben told you that. I mean, we're just surfing the wave, man, putting it together. Separating the dots, man. Separating the vortexes. All right, so, you know, check out our drop tuner package because we tune in 50 songs a month. You know what I mean? All you got to do is Dropbox them to us and we'll tune them to 432 hertz and drop them back. We do that for our community for only $5 a month to support our flow, you know what I mean, our platform. So, you know, check out the drop tuner package, man, and get them, you know, 50 songs a month. Just drop them in, your favorite songs, and pretty soon you start building up your own music library so that whether you're at the gym, now you're working out to a healthy frequency. There's no point in trying to get healthy to an unhealthy frequency in your ear, in your eardrum, in your cochlea, in your spiral, in your cochlea. You know what I mean? You got a spiral in your ear. So get your music tuned to 432. Try it out. Hit me up, man. Music at 432. The drop. frequencyoflearning.com, man. All right, make sure you make it happen. And love to Isaac Ford, our music supervisor, because he tunes the music for our live flow. You know what I'm saying? So for the live radio, Isaac Ford, man, is tuning up. I mean, boatloads of music, man. Boatloads of music, man. So get over there, man. Download the app, BM432. Enjoy the flow. You know what I mean? However it's coming. And the vibe suites are coming back on the website, so you can just fall back and enjoy whatever steady vibration you want, man. And the frequency of learning is getting revamped and dropping on you within the next week. So look out for the frequency of learning. For all the parents out there that want to, you know what I'm saying, put their children in a nice, you know, musical vibration at home, then you can check out frequencyoflearning.com, frequencyoflearning.com, and check out the Calm Zone. Every day my children ask to play the Calm Zone. There's brain activation games, you know what I'm saying, nice educational games, as well as some other stuff like, you know, Pac-Man, and they got chess, they got all this stuff, but they also get to choose their own playlists, you know, so they can fall back in the harps, they can fall back in the pianos, they can do the kids bop thing, and they can be in 432, you know what I mean? We can at least get them, you know, out of the light code frequency lockdown, you know. We're just getting our family above the barrier. So check out the frequency of learning, check out the drop, you know what I'm saying, tuner packages, and just, you know, start doing it yourself, man. Learn how to tune your music to 432, or, you know, saying just another harmonic frequency that's on the scale that, you know, suits you. You know what I mean? It's not up to me to tell you what frequency to choose. I just tell you to choose up. And when we're looking at it right here, it's all about music. We got to back it up because they're telling you in your face, it's not about those other things. It's a lot simpler than that, man. It's a lot simpler than this.
A lot to cover before we get there, though. For the record, the unraveling looks like this. Yeah, it's a doozy. So on the walls with these wheels are drawings of 7 people with animal heads. They're called neaters, and each of them has an orangish-red oval above its head. This is called the egg of metamorphosis. The neaters are showing us a time when we go through a certain stage of resurrection, which is a rapid biological change into a different life form. Not the average type of resurrection, I know. As you can see here, they're changing directions 90 degrees, and in doing so, they're changing dimensions. See, the dimensional levels are separated by 90 degrees. Musical notes are separated by 90 degrees. The chakras are also 90 degrees. It's a number that continually appears. Probably at this point, we should get a common understanding of what dimensions are, like 3rd dimension, 4th dimension, 5th dimension. What are we talking about here? Most people think of dimension in terms of time and space, the X, Y, and Z axis, with time becoming the 4th dimension. This is not what we are talking about. What we're seeing as the various dimensional levels has more to do with music and harmonics than anything else.
Dang.
A piano has 8 white keys from C to C, which is the familiar octave, and in between there are 5 black keys. Together this creates what is called the chromatic scale, which is 13 notes, well actually 12, with the 13th being the first in the next octave. So from one C to the next is really...
And remember, you got the chromatic dragons, right? The metallic dragons are the chromatic dragons, meaning that they, you know, are all these different, you know what I'm saying, etheric flows, you know what I mean, metallic flows with all these elements, just like the periodic table. Man, Urban Reed dropped the metallic dragon table, or periodic table of metallic dragons on us. The periodic table, man, I mean, hold up, man. I hope it's called this, because I'm belly flopping, man. But just go check out the Templar, man. I think it was the periodic. I ain't never heard of nothing like this before, but you know, when you got Drop Nation Surf for the wave, anything's possible. All possibilities, man. It's all happening. Periodic table of metallic. I spell right. Metallic. Hey, did it pop up on us, man? Hey, Templar, man. You be proud of me right now. It's a proud Templar moment. It's a moment when he falls back, man. He just pauses the video and he says, you know what? I've done well. I've done well. Man, can I get it bigger, though? Are they gonna give it to me? All right. Okay. Y'all thought it was play with the Dungeons and Dragons? Well, take this, man. Right in your face. You think this is play? You think this is play, man? Chromatic. Look, we're just talking about the chromatic notes, right? And these are chromatic. You know, you got the chromatic dragons. You just talk metallic dragons. You're just talking Platonic solids, right? And these Platonic solids are connected to these elements. It's all sound. It's all music, baby. It's all music. You can't ignore the music now. You can't ignore the music, man. You know what I mean? Our people is in the hood right now. Like, how do you make something like this apply to reality, right? And that's what we're here. That's what we're here to do. You know what I mean? Is represent reality. So we're in the hood. I'm in the hood right now. I'm in Inglewood right now, right? So I'm chilling, you know, in my car, falling back, man, enjoying life with you. You know what I mean? And how does this apply to us right here? You know what I mean? In reality, man, I mean, when you're talking about the fire, the water, when you're talking about the elements, this is connecting musically. This is a sonic connection. You know what I mean? This is a sound thing. And that's why I play our people's music. You know what I mean? That's why when they come over, I'm going to give it to you raw. Like, don't come over here, you know, finicking around. I'm going to put the vibe suites up so, you know, you can always just get whatever flow. But when you come over here to the drop and we over here representing our turf and we playing their music, you might feel like you're too uppity, you know, to hear real hip hop or, you know what I mean, to hear, you know what I'm saying, certain lyrics or that type of thing. Oh, you know, this is cussing, but no one's cursing you because no one's switching up your elements. Cussing don't exist. You're talking English. It's a broken language. Fuck this language, man. Stop holding on to it. These are curse words. Fuck this language, man. Fuck English, man. Fuck it. You know what I mean? This shit ain't shit. Get out of the slave masters, you know what I mean? You have to speak proper. You got to speak like this. Be you, man. You got to be you now more than ever because you're original. You got an original flow, an original spiral. You're the elements. You're the metallic dragons. This is why they try to, you know, feed us on this bullshit GMO. They don't want us to ether up, man. That's why I said choose up. There's another possibility other than just fighting dog crazy in the streets, right? There's a way to ether up, Dragon style, when you're talking the periodic table of metallic dragons. You're talking music. So we started crystallizing their music. Now they can hear their music in 432 hertz. Where else could they go to hear their music in 432 hertz? Now that they're in 432, guess what? They over here listening to the Ame'rican Holocaust. They over here listening to the Light Hour, to Caramel's Meditations, to Real Spill, Thinking Out Loud, Tokef Banak, you dig? Crystal Essentials, you dig? In Battle Time, Ether Sessions. I'm talking, man, living well, man. I'm talking lyrics and books, man. The Naturalists, man. They over here in the frequency rehab with Isaac Ford, man. They're getting zany, baby. They getting zany. They zoning up with Chef Candy, man, and that zon cooking, crystallizing their diet. All because of music. It's all about music. That's when you ether up. So all praise to why we have a design. We have a purpose. Be a part of our purpose. Increase our purpose. Stop doing it all individually. But if you got to do it individually, respect our purpose and we respect yours. And let's all hit the mark. Let's all hit the mark. Let's all hit the towel. That's all we got, man. All we got. Love the Urban Read, man. I'm going to drop this below, man. Metallic. Periodic table. Okay. It's all about music, though. It's all musical, right? It's all about the flow. It's all musical. Let go.
Today, I'm going to show you what these wheels meant, and in future lessons, we will go over the details of this unraveling. There's a lot to cover before we get there, though. For the record, the unraveling looks like this. Yeah, it's a doozy. So on the walls with these wheels are drawings of 7 people with animal heads. They're called needers, and each of them has an orangish-red oval above its head. This is called the egg of metamorphosis. The needers are showing us a time when we go through a certain stage of resurrection, which is a rapid biological change into a different life form. Not the average type of resurrection, I know. As you can see here, they're changing directions 90 degrees, and in doing so, they're changing dimensions. See, the dimensional levels are separated by 90 degrees. Musical notes are separated by 90 degrees. The chakras are also 90 degrees. It's a number that continually appears. Probably at this point we should get a common understanding of what dimensions are, like third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension. What are we talking about here? Most people think of dimension in terms of time and space, the X, Y, and Z axis, with time becoming the fourth dimension. This is not what we are talking about. What we're seeing as the various dimensional levels has more to do with music and harmonics than anything else. A piano has 8 white keys from C to C, which is the familiar octave, and in between there are 5 black keys. Together this creates what is called the chromatic scale, which is 13 notes, well actually 12, with the 13th being the first in the next octave. So from one C to the next is really 13 steps, not 8. This also correlates with the 7, 8, and 13 chakra system I mentioned in lesson 2. Keeping that in mind, I want to show you a sine wave. Sine waves correspond with light and the electromagnetic spectrum and the vibration of sound. We're all very familiar with this. In this entire reality we're in, every single thing is based on sine waves. There are no exceptions to this except for maybe spirit and void. Quantum physics and quantum mechanics looks at everything in the reality of one of two ways. You can look at anything, like the computer you're watching this video on, to be made up of tiny particles like atoms. Or you can forget about that idea completely and look at it as a vibration, a waveform, such as electromagnetic fields or even sound. If you look at it as atoms, the laws can be seen to fit that model. But if you look at it as waveforms, the laws can be seen to fit that model. Both of these systems come out of the flower of life, one being the one we just looked at, fruit of life to Metatron's cube and beyond, and the other being this beautiful mess of a picture. Just looking at it hurts my head. Everything in this world is a waveform, or can be seen as sound. All things, your bodies, planets, absolutely everything, are a waveform. If you choose this particular way of looking at reality, and then superimpose that view over the reality of the harmonics of music, we can begin to talk about dimensions.
Whoa. I mean, this is why I wanted to see with a dragonfly perspective, because I don't really remember a lot of this, you know what I mean? So, you know, we cover so much. We go so many places, but we're always on that towel, you know what I mean? We're always holding that Excalibur sword is our towel. You know what I mean? If we're not talking, you know, directly in the script, you know what I mean, then we're going to be, you know, talking to that indigenous truth, connecting it with the script. And if we're not talking the indigenous truth, you know what I'm saying, connecting that with the script, then we're going to be talking orientation, you know what I mean, you know what I'm saying, the earth orientation and connecting that with the script. And if we're not talking the earth orientation, connecting that with the script, then you best believe we're talking energy, frequency, and vibration and connecting that with the script, with the creator, with the frequency of the creator. Now we're talking about either you look at it as a pattern, as a wave, or just an atom. Either you collapse. You see how fast they move because they were just talking quantum mechanics and, you know, we were just talking the double slit experiment. And I just want you to see how fast they threw that out there for you to catch, you know, for those in the know, right? Let's just catch this one part again.
Anything else? A piano has 8 white keys from C to C, which is the familiar octave, and in between there are 5 black keys. Together this creates what is called the chromatic scale, which is 13 notes, well actually 12, with the 13th being the first in the next octave. So from one C to the next is really 13 steps, not 8. This also correlates with the 7, 8, and 13 chakra system I mentioned in lesson 2. Keeping that in mind, I want to show you a sine wave. Sine waves correspond with light and the electromagnetic spectrum and the vibration of sound. We're all very familiar with this. In this entire reality we're in, every single thing is based on sine waves. There are no exceptions to this except for maybe spirit and void. Quantum physics and quantum mechanics looks at everything in the reality of one of two ways. You can look at anything, like the computer you're watching this video on, to be made up of tiny particles like atoms. Or you can forget about that idea completely and look at it as a vibration, a waveform, such as electromagnetic fields or even sound. If you look at it as atoms, the laws can be seen to fit that model.
So if you look at it just as an atom, then you have collapsed the wave pattern to that one possibility, and you can create a law to fit that model, right?
But if you look at it as waveforms, the laws can be seen to fit that model. Both of these systems come out of the...
Right, so 2 different systems. So when you have all possibilities, that's a whole nother, you know, there's laws that govern that, you know what I'm saying, all possibilities rather than just that one single atom, you know what I mean? Is it a full wave or is it an atom? Is it a full wave or an atom? And I keep hearing something, you know, dope every time I go to this spot, man. So, you know, we taking our time because there ain't no time. I don't want to just try to get to the end of this thing because then I'm defeating the purpose. I'm racing against time, right? Now we chilling. You know us, we're going to do another part to this, whatever the case is. We'll keep it going. If you enjoy this type of thing, we'll keep it going. But just, I'm just trying to catch a couple of things here, man. So just fall back with me, man. Fall back.
90 degrees. The chakras are also 90 degrees. It's a number that continually appears. Probably at this point, we should get a common understanding of what dimensions are. Like third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension. What are we talking about here? Most people think of dimension in terms of time and space, the X, Y, and Z axis, with time becoming the fourth dimension. This is not what we are talking about. What we're seeing as the various dimensional levels has more to do with music and harmonics than anything else. A piano has 8 white keys from C to C, which is the familiar octave.
Okay. All right. From C to C. From C to C. All right. I'm going to get my Templar on, man. And it's all about seeing clearly, right? Seeing clearly, man. We're just talking about the dragon, right? But for real, we're just talking about the dragon. Because he's going to say that it got 12 across when you count the black keys. And then there's a 13th, like a 13th tribe, right? Like a 13th tribe of Moses. Now connect that Moses with the Moses and David comparisons and put the timeline together, especially with Prester John, and you have this energy that sort of, has a lot of similarities with both Moses and David. In this Prester John, he's called David, but he's also carrying around this staff. He has all this magical power. I mean, surely he will be called a Merlin. Surely he will be called a Moses. You know what I'm saying? He's leading his people to the promised land, this Prester John. So he has a lot of Moses feel and he has a lot of David feel. You know what I mean? And so that's when we got to really, ticking on that clock right there, so to speak. And we said, all right, well, it's David Moses. I mean, we started, just looking at all this stuff in history. It's David Moses. It's Moses David. These are both titles. Moshe is a title. David's a title. But when it comes down to it, and that's why I keep pointing to the great work that the Templars done, is that he's connected, this David to David type of, perspective that, time seems to go from David to David. David seems to be connected with like the beginnings, these beginnings and these endings. It starts with David, ends with David, starts with David, from David to David. There's a lot of work the bro's doing, man, that, is really substantiating a lot of that. So that's what got me thinking when they said this 13th situation and how it's the beginning and the ending. And this all has to do with this flow that we're in, right? It's all music. We're going octaves, our dimensions, and what's the beginnings and what's the endings, or the beginnings are the endings, and who's representing that. You got this priest king, you got this Melchizedek that represents this stuff, you know what I mean? That represents these particular, areas or whatever you want to call pivot points. I don't know, you know what I mean? But they represent these pivots, right? They represent these turning points, from beginnings, cycle, type of flow. But when we talk about cycles, it's really important to get off that 8, you know what I'm saying? To where you're just cycling in the same place. When we talk cycle, we're still talking spiraling up, right? You're spiraling up. You're still, headed to another octave. You're not just in the same dimension spiraling. You're not just going in the loop. So it's all about raising your vibration. So this part right here got me thinking to the, credit of the Templar about that David to David perspective when it comes to time.
In between, there are 5 black keys. Together, this creates what is called the chromatic scale, which is 13 notes. Well, actually 12, with the 13th being the first in the next octave.
So we hear about this 13th tribe, or this tribe of Moshe, or this tribe of David, or this tribe of Prester John. Let's go.
So from one C to the next is really 13 steps, not 8. This also correlates with the 7, 8, and 13 chakra system I mentioned in lesson 2.
Bang.
Keeping that in mind, I want to show you a sine wave. Sine waves correspond with light and the electromagnetic spectrum and the vibration of sound. We're all very familiar with this. In this entire reality we're in, every single thing is based on sine waves. There are no exceptions to this except for maybe spirit and void. Quantum physics and quantum mechanics looks at everything in the reality of one of 2 ways. You can look at anything, like the computer you're watching this video on, to be made up of tiny particles like atoms. Or you can forget about that idea completely and look at it as a vibration, a waveform, such as electromagnetic fields or even
All
sound.
possibilities.
If you look at it as atoms, the laws can be seen to fit that model. But if you look at it as waveforms, the laws can be seen to fit that model.
Happening.
Both of these systems come out of the flower of life, one being the one we just looked at, fruit of life to Metatron's cube and beyond, and the other being this beautiful mess of a picture. Just looking at it hurts my head. Everything in this world is a waveform, or can be seen as sound. All things, your bodies, planets, absolutely everything, are a waveform. If you choose this particular way of looking at reality, and then superimpose that view over the reality of the harmonics of music, we can begin to talk about dimensions. The dimensional levels are nothing but different base rate wavelengths. The only difference between this dimension and any other is the length of its basic waveform. It's just like a radio set. Turn the dial, you pick up a wavelength. It's the same with dimensions. If you were to change the wavelength of your consciousness, and in doing so change all of your body patterns to a wavelength different from this universe, you would literally disappear out of this world and
the people that have disappeared, the ho-ho calm. They keep saying we've disappeared, right? Man, I mean, what frequency do you choose? What radio signal do you choose? That's why we had to start our own. We had to start our own, man. 432. That's where we at. You want to tune into our dial? Go ahead. You know what I mean? Because this is where we're at, man. You can't knock us off our 360-degree perspective. We tell you to your face bone, our perspective is that it's all Hawa, that it's all happening. Our perspective is that our Creator exists. Our breath of security is everywhere. Our water is everywhere. It exists. So we are everywhere. We exist everywhere. One connection, one drop. You can't knock us off that. We tell you that we ain't spinning on no ball because no one can prove movement, not even Einstein. And they can't even measure movement going through the ether. So they have to abolish the ether. Love to my jigger. We know we're not spinning on a ball. We know that water doesn't curve into a ball because you've never seen water do nothing but level out. Show me an experiment, just one please of water curving into a ball with gravity, not zero gravity, with gravity. Nah, man, we know we're not spinning on a ball, so we're firm, fixed, and immovable like our scripture says. We know that we are the indigenous, the autochthonous, the real ones, the originals, the original Ame'ricans, planted right here that you just found us in, and you still trying to figure us out. But if you can't tell us, you know what I'm saying, who we are, how can you tell us who we're not? You know what I'm talking about. They can't tell us nothing about who you are, so they can't tell you who you're not. So claim who you are. It shakes up the whole foundation when you claim exactly who you are. The copper-colored Khan, the Amaru Khan, the Khan dynasty, the original Iberi, people of the cross, the Tau. They can't knock us off our 360-degree perspective. They can't tell us that we're not in the frequency of the 4 + 2 + 3, 4 + 3 + 2, the 9, the spiral is life, man. The flower of life, the fruit of life. They can't tell us that we're not originals in that frequency, that it's not about music, that we shouldn't be in our original ancient love song, that we are not the 9 as our Creator is not the 9, the noon, the seed. So if you can't tell us that, you know what I'm saying, we're not in our 9 spiral 432, and you can't tell us that we're not indigenous to the Amaru Cuz, and you can't tell us that we are not firm, fixed, and immovable on this plane, and you can't tell us that our Creator, you know what I'm saying, our breath of security is not real because you're swimming in it and you're afraid of it because it connects to all kind of frequencies that have been spooking y'all asses out this whole time. The dragon's been scaring the shit out of y'all people. But this is my plaything, you know what I mean? This is who I rock with. This is who we rock with. The fire, the water, the air, man, the ether. We rock with the earth. So we rock with our Platonic solids. We rock with our frequency. We're not afraid of it. And it's rising. And it's rising. Yeah, it's rising, man. You feel it. It's popping off all over the place. So let it pop off. Let it pop off and you continue to choose up and crystallize. Because that's what's happening right now, man. It's all happening.
appear in the one you were tuned in. It's been theorized that the base rate wavelength that we're currently living in is 7.23 centimeters. There's a few reasons for this. In a spiritual sense, the 7.23 wavelength is Om, the Hindu sound of the universe. Maybe that's why oming is such a powerful tool in meditation. Not only that, but if you were to take 100 people and measure the distance between their eyes, the average length is 7.23. Same with the distance from the tip of our chins to the tip of our noses, and the distance across our palms and between our chakras.
And do the math, the 7.23 centimeter is the equivalent of the 432 hertz. The Om is the equivalent of the 432 hertz. It's back to the 9.
Chakras. This 7.23 length is located throughout our bodies in various ways because we are immersed within this particular dimension. There's another reason as well. Bell Laboratories found this wavelength when they were setting up the microwave system around the United States.
Remember we talked about the Bell Laboratory experiment, man? Remember this drop? And they had to crank up their radars to try to get no interference, but everywhere they pointed their radar, they got interference, and they said that must be the universe's frequency. No, that's the frequency of Ahchwa, and they were getting it everywhere. So they cranked up their signal way, way, way above, I think 50,000 times more, you know what I mean, than it was warranted to get a frequency that they can't hear Ahchwa's interference pattern. And that's what we're running on today. This is the matrix. This is the creation of the matrix to get a wave pattern that's not interfering with Ahchwa. Listen to it. Dig on it.
They found static in their system because they chose a wavelength just slightly longer than 7.23 for their system. In order to get rid of this static, they did something that we as a planet are still suffering from. They upped the power 50,000 times over what we would normally need, which created a very powerful field, so that the 7.23 wavelength would not interfere. It's for those reasons that I believe 7.23 is the wavelength of our dimension. As you go up in dimensional levels, the wavelength gets shorter and shorter, from our chins to the tip of our noses, and the distance across our palms and between our chakras. This 7.23 length is located throughout our bodies in various ways because we are immersed within this particular dimension. There's another reason as well. Bell Laboratories found this wavelength when they were setting up the microwave system around the United States. They found static in their system because they chose a wavelength just slightly longer than 7.23 for their system. In order to get rid of this static, they did something that we as a planet are still suffering from. They upped the power 50,000 times over what we would normally need, which created a very powerful field, so that the 7.23 wavelength would not interfere.
A very powerful field so that the 7.23 wavelength would not interfere. What does that sound like to you? That they created a simulation, that they created a matrix, that they created some type of web, that they can do whatever they want to do and not interfere with another energy, right? Another wave pattern. Now, this only affects us underneath this firmament, right? Because above the firmament, and that's why Ahchwa needs a firmament to keep this hijack static out. But for a time, these energies have rulership over this area, right? So they're able to crank up these frequencies. They're able to do all this stuff for a time, right? And they know the time is right up. It's right up, man. The time is really way up at this point. So if he says 7.23 is the frequency of this dimension, then what's 7.35? Look, he's pointing to 7.35, right? So they're running off 7.35, not 7.23. So it's 7.35, the frequency of the matrix, man. Is this the centimeter wave pattern of the matrix, man? Remember, they cranked it up 50,000 times, man. Hear it again so you know what's happening to you and you and you and why this 5G. We're going to get back in them secret weapons, quiet wars. You know what I'm talking about. Secret wars, quiet weapons. However they say it. Love to Yosef the Real. We're going to get back on that. Make sure you get that energy frequency. Tokef Banat every Sunday, 7 o'clock. Yeah, man. Is this the frequency of the synthetic matrix, man?
7.23 length is located throughout our bodies in various ways because we are immersed within this particular dimension. There's another reason as well. Bell Laboratories found this wavelength when they were setting up the microwave system around the United States. They found static in their system because they chose a wavelength just slightly longer than 7.23 for their system. In order to get rid of this static, they did something that we as a planet are still suffering from. They upped the power 50,000 times over what we would normally need, which created a very powerful field, so that the 7.23 wavelength would not interfere. It's for those reasons that I believe 7.23 is the wavelength of our dimension. As you go up in dimensional levels, the wavelength gets shorter and shorter, with higher and higher energy. As you go down in levels, the wavelength gets longer and longer, with lower and lower energy, more and more dense. Just as with a piano, there's a space between the notes, so that when you hit one note, there's a very definite place where the next note is. In this waveform universe we exist in, there's a very definite place where the next dimensional level exists. It's specific wavelength relative to this one. Most cultures in the cosmos have a basic understanding of this and understand how to change between dimensions. However, because of certain events that happened on Earth 13,000 years ago, we have all forgotten, but we're about to remember. So if we show each note in the chromatic scale as a circle, we have 13 circles. Each circle represents a white or black key, and the shaded circle at the end would be the 13th note that begins the next octave. This circle here represents the third dimension. This is where we are, and this circle next to it would be the fourth. In Lesson 3, we talked about channeling, and this is typically where channeled beings are. This is also where you explore when you are astral projecting or lucid dreaming. You'll notice now that the musical system goes upwards and downwards forever, octaves over octaves over octaves. Theoretically, this is how the universe goes too, an infinite spectrum of universes in both directions going upwards and downwards forever. I mean, come on, we thought our universe was big, but everything in our universe, as far as we can see, well, that's just this one dimension. You may have heard people talk about 144 dimensions and how 144 relates to other spiritual subjects. This is because there are 12 notes in an octave and 12 overtones between each note. 12 times 12 equals 144 dimensional levels. To be specific, there are 12 major dimensions and 132 minor dimensions within each octave, though in truth this progression probably goes on forever. The diagram we've been looking at represents one octave. The 13th note repeats, and then there's another octave after that. I want to show you this. I was watching Ancient Aliens not long ago, and one of the natives who has communication with beings in higher dimensions told the man who was interviewing him
that they have always been here, even right here where we're sitting right now. But you just don't see them. They're in a different frequency.
And no one really got what he meant. So that's kind of a fresh perspective on that. An apocalypse is a disclosure of something hidden from the majority of mankind in an era dominated by falsehood and misconception. Today, we're going to be looking at another way that humans grow through phi. Instead of looking at phi inside the body, we're going to be looking at phi outside the body, and what it means for us in this pivotal point in human history. Do you remember the fruit of life? The first system created the Platonic solids, which created structure throughout the universe. The second system was the basis of how vibration, sound, harmonics, music, and matter are all interrelated in all of creation. Today, we will look at the third system. The fruit of life will reveal itself in the process. We'll call this system the circles and squares of human consciousness. It is what the Chinese called circling the square and squaring the circle. Remember when we discussed the Platonic solids in Lesson 6? I showed you that all of them will sit perfectly within a sphere, each with every corner touching the sphere perfectly. Well, there's one other shape that can do that. It's a characteristic that only one of the Platonic solids have, making it special. It is the cube, which you can put every single Platonic solid inside, and an edge or point will touch the inside of the cube perfectly. Through truncating the cube in different ways, you can create all of the other shapes. Because of this characteristic, it essentially means that the cube is like the father of all shapes. It is a male form. And the sphere is the mother of all shapes. It is a female form. All levels of consciousness in the universe are integrated by a single image in sacred geometry. It is the key to space, time, and dimension, as well as consciousness itself.
So if you can hijack the cube, you know what I mean? That's where you got the Metatron's cube, and you know what I mean? They turn it into an evil Saturn thing and all this stuff like that. Because if you can hijack the cube, I mean, you could tap into, you know, a lot. You could in this particular dimension, you know what I mean? You could tap into a lot. You can control all kinds of things, right? And then you got the sphere or the mother, you know what I mean? And I don't know how much they try to tap into that or if they can. You know what I mean? That's questions for another time. Let's go.
Each level is a geometric image or lens that spirit looks through to see the one reality, resulting in a completely different experience. In the case of humans, this image is the circle and square. This is what Leonardo da Vinci was doing when he drew this drawing, and I'm going to show you what this circle and square combination mean. If you put a circle inside a square perfectly, and then continue to put another circle and square, each with the same diameter, one radius away on all sides, going outwards, you get a drawing that looks like this. You'll notice that with the first circle and square, they fit perfectly within the other. This also happens with the second circle and square. However, then the squares begin penetrating circles. The male form begins interacting with the female form. Why is this important? Well, the circles and squares begin to equate the phi ratio. See, when the circumference of a circle and the perimeter of the square are equal, this equates the phi ratio. So as you can see on this diagram, on the fourth square and the fifth circle, it begins to create the phi ratio. It's close, but not circle and square combination mean. If you put a circle inside a square perfectly, and then continue to put another circle and square, each with the same diameter, one radius away on all sides, going outwards, you get a drawing that looks like this. You'll notice that with the first circle and square, they fit perfectly within the other. This also happens with the second circle and square. However, then the squares begin penetrating circles. The male form begins interacting with the female form. Why is this important? Well, the circles and squares begin to equate the phi ratio. See, when the circumference of a circle and the perimeter of the square are equal, this equates the phi ratio.
Bang! This ain't no play. All that circle in the square and square in the circle talk, of course, reminds you of some basic, Mason talk, right? So, yeah, man. Yeah, it's all sacred geometry. You know what I mean? It's all sacred geometry. And at first you're like, well, why is it important? You know what I mean? Is it just just something to know? Well, if you overstand it, right, then you overstand dimensions, right? Then you overstand, how to, penetrate into other dimensions, right? You can get secrets, you can get dropped, you know what I mean? But it's all connected to other forces or guardians that are guarding these areas, or hijack guardians, you know what I mean, that they're tapping into, whatever it is. You're just talking energy, frequency, vibration. Remember, it's all about the musical notes, right? The scale. It's all about the scale, right? All this is, basic Mason talk. The scales, right? Egypt, scales, you know what I mean? Then you got this circle and square, square and circle. And then, bang, once it's been penetrated, bang, right in our face bone.
So as you can see on this diagram, on the fourth square and the fifth circle, it begins to create the phi ratio. It's close, but not perfect. It's only a 0.6 difference. I'm measuring in radii, by the way. The inner circle has a radius of 1, so it's 2 radii across. The next is 4, and then 6, 8, 10, and so on. So the one we just looked at makes a close phi ratio, and then it moves out of sync, staying out of sync for a bit, and then bam. Again, it moves into yet another phi ratio. This time, the difference is only 0.52, even closer to perfection than before. This will continue on forever. If you were to continue this drawing outwards to infinity, each time it would go into sync, drop out of sync for a few circles and squares, but then eventually hit phi again closer than it did the last time. Right now, there are 3 primary levels of consciousness that we are going to be talking about. They are essentially who we were, who we are, and who we will be. We'll call it the first, second, and third, so that it's easy to understand what we're talking about. The ancient Egyptians were very concerned with these 3 levels as well, and much of their culture was based on this information. Each of these levels has their own geometric lens too, which look like this. We'll come back to these soon. This is the first level of consciousness, and this is the third. We are on neither of these 2 phi levels on this circle and square chart. Where we are, the second level of consciousness, is here. We are on the 5th square relative to the 6th circle. For quite a while now, I've been saying that we're at a disharmonic level, and it's something that we're passing through as a species. Now you begin to see the bigger picture of what I meant. The reason it's disharmonic is because it does not equate a phi ratio, not even close. Disharmonic levels are important because they bridge a gap between the divine, pure levels. However, when a species is here, it has to get in and get out as fast as possible, or else they will destroy themselves and everything around them incredibly quickly. You can see this happening all around the world today, because we're at the very end of it, and everything is crashing down on us. We've discussed this all before, notably in the intros of Lesson 1 and 2. So, the reason that we're on this circle and square combination, and not the 6th square relative to some other circle, is because of this. If you take the square and rotate it 45 degrees, it actually creates a bridge. It connects us from 2 harmonic levels of being. We're moving from one state of being to the other, this time even closer to source. This is a very exciting time for us. Oh, let me show you this too. This is how the Great Pyramid is set up. This chamber here is called the King's Chamber. If you cut the Great Pyramid horizontally at the King's Chamber, which was the main initiation chamber, and rotate the top half 45 degrees, it makes the exact same image as our level of consciousness. There's a reason for that. The Great Pyramid is the key instrument in allowing humans to reach the 3rd level of consciousness, both as a species and individually. In fact, that's part of the reason why the Great Pyramids were created in the first place. Let's talk more about these levels, though. So what Leonardo was drawing was actually the first level of consciousness. See how he hid lines in this drawing? If you complete this grid, it creates an 8x8 grid. This is the same 64 square grid found on the first level. Measuring in radii, this grid is 8x8. However, the circle has 10 radii across, so we'll call this first level an 8x10. This is where we were. The first level is the first time self-aware consciousness began. The second level has 10 squares across the large square, and a 12 radii circle, so we'll call it a 10x12. This is where we are now. This level is the third level, which is also called Christ consciousness. It is a 14 by 18. Now, there's always a reason for everything in sacred geometry. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens without a reason. Everything is connected. Out of the whole spectrum of possibilities, why did self-aware human consciousness begin when the fourth square went into harmony with the fifth circle? Well, let's overlay the fruit of life over our first level for a second. Look at that! It exactly fits the fourth square and fifth circle perfectly. Do you see the perfection of life? The fruit of life pattern was hidden beneath this pattern all along. They're precisely superimposed over the other.
So when they circle the square, right, or square the circle, which one, right? Then I guess you got to get, way behind the scenes to know which one. I guess it depends on which dimension you want to be in. He just says the fourth and the fifth circle. So the fourth and the fifth circle, right? Fourth and fifth, that's that 9 again. Are they circling the square and squaring the circle of the fourth and the fifth circle? Third and fourth circle? Sixth and seventh circle? Guess it really depends, right? Remember that Gollum, remember the Gollum talk, Left the Natural, man. He brought it back out, man. Love to KB, the hijacker Cezanne with that Sefer Yetzirah. We got to get back on that. How they were able to create people, man. They created people using the Hebrew language, meditating, on the Hebrew language. This is in the old Sephars, right? The Sefer Yetzirah, right? So these are those, secret, initiation type of joints, where they were creating people. Now, either you're going to create somebody pure water or you're going to create somebody, hijack city. I guess it depends, right, on what the purpose is. And this is back to the slaying the dragon, back into the creating of your opposites. You see how this is being able to used in, other intentions. They could put different intentions on every crystal. Remember, you can put a different intention on whatever crystal. So they could take a perfectly good amethyst crystal and hijack it with a different intention. They could take this fruit of life, right, and hijack it with a different intention. They could take the fourth and the fifth circle, the square and the circle, and hijack that particular dimension or reality with a different intention. So that's why we dig on this, because it's all about our invasion. It's all about understanding it, right? Dragons fighting in the sky, or dragons fighting within you. Platonic silence, man. Come on.
In a right brain way, this is how to explain why consciousness first became self-aware between the fourth square and fifth circle. This sacred image was part of the pattern. The fruit of life was completed at the precise moment that the phi ratio first appeared.
Whoa. They said consciousness first got aware, right? Listen to the verbiage, because we're just digging on that alchemy, dragon, the alchemical dragon, right? Alchemical serpent. And when you read the alchemical serpent, which is the snake, it says that it's just now bursting into consciousness. So they keep saying us, we are doing this, we just became this. That's why I said dodge the hijack, because they're trying to collapse your wave pattern too. They say you can choose to look at it like an atom or a wave, right? So they don't acknowledge the creator, right? So they're just kind of like saying the universe, the seeded life must be the reason, all this other stuff, right? So now they're trying to tell you, again, let's get that last part back. Just listen close.
The circle has 10 radii across, so we'll call this first level an 8 by 10. This is where we were. The first level is the first time self-aware consciousness began. The second level has 10 squares across the large square and a 12 radii circle, so we'll call it a 10 by 12. This is where we are now. This level is the third level, which is also called Christ consciousness. It is a 14 by 8.
Christ consciousness. Now you're back in the thoughts. So this is where we are. So who's the we? Don't think that you're the we. Look at him as the we. Look at, he's all into the thoughts, right? So look at the hijack as the we. And they're just bursting into consciousness. Listen closely.
18. Now, there's always a reason for everything in sacred geometry. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens without a reason. Everything is connected. Out of the whole spectrum of possibilities, why did self-aware human consciousness begin when the fourth square went into harmony with the fifth circle? Well, let's overlay the fruit of life over our first level for a second. Look at that! It exactly fits the fourth square and fifth circle perfectly. Do you see the perfection of life? The fruit of life pattern was hidden beneath this pattern all along. They're precisely superimposed over the other. In a right brain way, This is how to explain why consciousness first became self-aware between the 4th square and 5th circle. This sacred image was part of the pattern. The fruit of life was completed at the precise moment that the phi ratio first appeared, and when phi appeared, consciousness had a way to manifest in a new way.
So their consciousness is now, they're just now bursting right into this consciousness. They're just now getting conscious, right? This is the alchemical serpent. This is why I say it's trickery, because you're the alchemical dragon, right? Remember these alchemical dragons? We're talking metallic dragons, periodic tables. I mean, come over here and get your real spill enchiladas, you know what I'm saying? Because Drop Nation's making it happen. All right. Alchemical symbolism. Yeah, that's all we're talking about right now, man. Flower of life, seed of life, Platonic solids. Now it says this, which we know there's a difference, right? Because are they talking serpent, right? Alchemical serpent, or are we talking the alchemical dragon? This is the one of unknown origin, right? So don't even get it twisted. They can't tell you who you are. They can't tell you who you're not. They can't tell you where you're from. They can't tell you where you're going. You're of unknown origin. They're trying to get your living spirit, right? This is why they're eating your dragons. This is why they're eating your frequency on a lot of different, scales. You know what I'm saying? So this is what's happening with you. When it comes to the snake or the fox, right? Or the dog, right? Serpents often represent impersonal nature. So you're dealing with something of an impersonal nature of the unconsciousness, right? Just like he's saying, as it is just now bursting, it burst into consciousness. So what they're saying is representing them, that their impersonal nature on the 4th and 5th, circle and square is just now getting consciousness, and he's putting this fruit of life all into it, and that's cool. But that doesn't represent you. You know what I'm saying? You are the living spirit of unknown origin, so they can't tell you when you were first conscious. Only something synthetic is bursting into consciousness on the 4th and 5th circle. Something of an impersonal nature. An impersonal nature is just now getting consciousness because it was unconscious. And it's just now bursting into consciousness, all right? That's the serpent. This is thought talk. So we watch this spirit science with a dragonfly perspective. With a dragonfly perspective. We got 360 degrees. 360 degree enchiladas, man. Yeah, I mean, listen to it again. Now that you can see that they're talking serpent talk of just now bursting into consciousness, he's speaking about them.
Grid, it creates an 8x8 grid. This is the same 64 square grid found on the first level. Measuring in radii, this grid is 8x8. However, the circle has 10 radii across, so we'll call this first level an 8x10. This is where we were. The first level is the first time self-aware consciousness began. The second level has 10 squares across the large square and a 12 radii circle, so we'll call it a 10x12. This is where we are now. This level is the third level, which is also called Christ consciousness. It is a 14x18.
Hijacks.
Now, there's always a reason for everything in sacred geometry. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens without a reason. Everything is connected. Out of the whole spectrum of possibilities, why did self-aware human consciousness begin when the 4th square went into harmony?
What self-aware human consciousness began when the fuck? Look, man, they're just now bursting into consciousness at this point. So when they're circling the square and squaring the circle, this is why they're probably doing it on the 4th and the 5th circle and square, right? Because it's representing where thoughts synthetic flow is now getting consciousness. You know what I mean? It's representing where their master's synthetic energy is now bursting into consciousness, right? But we know that in order to get life, they must devour you. They must devour the Platonic solids of the Naga. Hey, man, this is Science Drop 101.
With the 5th circle. Well, let's overlay the fruit of life over our first level for a second. Look at that. It exactly fits the fourth square and fifth circle perfectly. Do you see the perfection of life? The fruit of life pattern was hidden beneath this pattern all along. They're precisely superimposed over the other. In a right brain way, this is how to explain why consciousness first became self-aware between the fourth square and fifth circle. This sacred image was part of the pattern. The fruit of life was completed at the precise moment that the phi ratio first appeared, and when phi appeared, consciousness had a way to manifest in a new way. Throughout time, many scholars have tried to figure out the secret meaning behind what Leonardo meant with the Vitruvian Man drawing. He was showing us human consciousness. This is where we were, the first level. There is a man who did draw our level, though. Da Vinci was studying the works of a man named Vitruvius, who lived 1400 years before Da Vinci, hence the name Vitruvian Man. Vitruvius...
Oh, come on, Hijack City, man. Hijack City, my bad, y'all. But think about that, man. I mean, they're representing their point of consciousness. Does it represent you? Think about
consciousness as well, and this is what it looked like. The circle and squares in this one are hidden, less obvious than the Da Vinci drawing. Regardless, they're there, and this is the current circle and square combination around our bodies. This drawing also contains the exact proportions of the Merkaba, which is an...
Now we're talking the Merkaba. Before they were talking about, you know what I'm saying, the star tetrahedron, right? So star tetrahedron, Merkaba, or, you know, you can look at it in 2D, whatever you want to call it, Star of David. It gets deeper, you know what I'm saying? It's talking about energy, frequency, you know what I mean? But, you know, it can be hijacked. All symbols can be hijacked, you know what I'm saying? They can hijack any crystal. They can hijack an amethyst. They can hijack, you know, quartz, whatever, you know what I mean? So the crystal isn't hijacked. The star, you know, the 6-pointed star is not hijacked. Not when you're just talking Merkaba. But you can hijack the energy. You can tap into it, you know what I mean? You could take a fresh water pond and start polluting the shit out of it, and you've just polluted pure water. That's what they can do with this, you know, in their own, you know what I'm saying, observance, however they're doing it. But yeah, man, I mean, you know what I'm saying, this stuff starts to really break down a lot of layers, you know what I mean? Because when you break it back down to energy, frequency, that clarifies a lot with the script, which clarifies a lot with just our indigenous flow, which clarifies a lot with our orientation. And that's our Tau. That's our Excalibur. We put it out there for you to dig on. And, you know, that's what we've been rocking with 10 toes down. And all praise our creator, man. It's continued to be, you know, revealed, man. And we just are flowing the wave. Remember, you know, you're surfing the wave. So either you're going to choose that one possibility, or you can, you know what I'm saying, truly factor in the fact that the wave connects on all levels, you know what I mean? So if you're surfing the wave, it's not about just saying, okay, I got conscious on the fourth and the fifth circle and square. How can that be when you're surfing the wave? The wave has always been conscious, you know what I'm saying? So that's the difference. That's the difference between the hijack, the synthetic, and the original Naga. You know what I'm saying? They have to get consciousness. They have to do what? They have to burst into consciousness, right? By hijacking you, they have to burst into consciousness. But all they did, you know what I'm saying, was create your opposite. Because this dragon is a mystery. It's a mysterious substance, right? It's a mysterious substance. It is the vessel that the spirit, the Ruach, is contained. Got you. And when they wanted to slay you, what they call the product of conjuentio, or conscientio, almost just make you think about cons and Sheol. Think about, you know what I mean, when you break it back into the Hebrew, you know, a lot of these words break down crazy because you got the cons and then you got the yuntio. Sounds like you're in Sheol. Sheol is hell, right? So let me put the cons in Sheol, conscientio, the cons in Sheol. Now they put the cons in Sheol, right? The cons are now in hell because they created the what? Opposites. I told you they can create it with the vibration, meditating on certain phrases or word combinations of the Hebrew. Yeah, man. And there was a pure water way of doing it. This wasn't just some wicked, whatever the case was. This is what apparently, you know, according to some texts, I think Abraham had the power to do it. I think Jacob had the power to do it. They could create a whole army if they needed to. Just like that. But then other, more on this, remember, it's a more and more war, so other people are using the same energy, right? Not the same energy source, but they're hijacking, these particular, I guess teachings, you can call it, They'll take this teaching and then they'll hijack it to their advantage, and they'll put a different intention on the crystal. And now you got a synthetic army, right? Now you got an army of pure hijacks, right? Truly opposites. Think about your opposites, right? Created by people that look like you, right? Using all this alchemy, trickery, Platonic, whatever, hijacking these symbols, speaking these ancient words, turning them into spells and curses. And here we are. This is literally like Disneyland. This is like a one big spell that we're rocking in according to one particular observation. The observation of your enemy, right? The observation of the hijack. This is the Matrix. That's why they had to amp up their radar way up to 7.35 instead of 7.23 to create another reality that has no interference, or a synthetic reality that has no interference with reality. A synthetic reality that has no interference with reality, and it gets no more synthetic than your opposites, man. It gets no more synthetic, man, than your opposites, man. All right? Let's get a couple more minutes, man. Then we're going to do probably a part 2 to it. I'm just surfing the wave tonight, man, enjoying the flow with you. Ahchwa. We just talking about sacred geometry.
Important energy system outside of the body, similar to how chakras are an energy system inside the body. This image also contains the diamond that perfectly contains the man from head to feet. This is the same image we saw in the consciousness chart, as well as the Great Pyramid. Further proof that this was what Vitruvius was demonstrating to us when he created this image. So here we have drawings of the first 2 levels of consciousness. From what I know, there is no drawing of a third. If there is, it's sealed up, locked away somewhere, and is probably one of the most sacred drawings in existence. Alright, I know talking about geometry all the time can be a little daunting. So many circles and ratios and everything. If this is something you want to learn more about, I am providing the Flower of Life books and PDFs in the comments. This information is found at the very beginning of Volume 2, and much, much more. I could probably do 4 or 5 lessons about the geometries of the human body and still not run out of things to talk about. But it's there for you if you want to learn more now. For the last portion of today's lesson, we're going to talk about some recent findings in modern science. As we just saw in the geometry, we are currently in a disharmonic state of being, but we are just about done with it. In doing so, we are moving into a new state of being. We are transferring from the 2nd level of consciousness to the 3rd, also called Christ consciousness. If we look at evolution in Earth's history, we always seem to make random jumps. There are always missing links in the evolutionary chain. Scientists say that we just haven't found all the fossils. And creationists say that God did it, and therefore it's part of some divine plan. But looking at what we just learned about consciousness, does it not make sense that evolution and creationism are just 2 sides of the same coin? Consciousness moves through different states of being, constantly moving closer and closer to divinity, to Phi. Every time it reaches a new stage, it makes a rapid biological change into something new, like what we're doing now.
This is what they hope to do, man. They hope to be able to transform to something, some higher God. They want to be God. You already are, right? He is. She is. You are. You're the wave. Surf the wave. You don't have to take step on step on step on step. Fuck this step shit. That's not your style. That's not your stilo. That's not your swag. You're the wave. You can observe and collapse the wave pattern wherever you want. You could be conscious or unconscious. And when you decide to be conscious again, guess what? Volcanoes start popping off. Dragons start flying. The Naga wakes up when the Naga is ready to observe, man. Observe the real. Shabbat it up. Rest when it's time to rest. Don't put no power before your power. Don't kill your brother. Don't kill your sister. Don't steal from your brother. Don't steal from your sister. Don't bear false witness on your brother or your sister. You dig? When you're ready to observe, when you're ready to observe, man, then you have the powwow, man. You got the power. You got the flow. You got the glow. You jump over all these steps, man. You know what I'm saying? You move like giants. When you walk, you just walk over them. When you're ready, are you ready? Are you ready to fly?
This is what the ancient Egyptians called resurrection, which we mentioned in Lesson 7. So, if we're really going through an evolution of consciousness, what's happening inside of us? Surely, this would mean that there are also biological changes happening to us at our core level, right? Does modern science see any big changes that they're afraid to tell the general public because they think it will cause a panic? Short answer, yes. Long answer, we are changing. Scientists have been studying this for almost 10 to 20 years now. Several years ago in New Mexico, there was a convention of geneticists from all over the world with the main topic of discussion being DNA mutations. Scientists acknowledge that we are changing, but the end result, they do not know. Through sacred geometry, we begin to actually see where we could be going. With 12 strands activated, you have 10 times as much information available to you than you do with just 2 strands, as we do now. Not only that, but the 12 strands work in sync with the 12 chakras, providing an immense amount of energy into the body. We are about to become super beings, enabling us to understand and do things that currently seem...
Oh, now it's a we. Now you want to include us, right? You see, like they want your heritage. They want your inheritance without going through what you had to go through to crystallize. They watch you suffer. They inherit your lands. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to live life and say, I'm just a part of the universal flow. Nah, my dude, it ain't that simple to be a super naga. You see, they're creating their own synthetic super nagas in the new test, right? But you are the real super naga. And it ain't got nothing to do with evolution for you to, have any type of genetic, whatever they want to call genetic mutations, because, you know what I'm saying, we don't mutate, man. We crystallize, you dig? We crystallize. When Hawaii puts that frequency, when those dragons fly above, those comets fly above, they let off a frequency, just like 2012, the Naga wakes up. The Naga rises. They got nothing to do with evolution. It's just the flow. We're just surfing the wave, man. We're just surfing the wave, man.
Paranormal, bizarre, or downright impossible. From the article The Bigger Picture by Suzanne Thorpe Clarke, we are being changed physically from carbon-based beings to crystalline-based beings. This is interesting because I've actually heard this from various channelings now, ascension and transformation into crystalline at our core.
Crystallized.
First the psychics were telling us this, and now we have science backing it up. What we know for sure is that we are going through a shift. In almost every ancient text and Bible, it speaks about a great shift and
You got to keep going to our stuff because that's where it's at. But when you know that's where it's at, and you put yourself in it, you superimpose you and you say, well, that must be me and my tribe and me and my people. We all must be the same people. If we were all the same people, we would have went through the same shit. No, but on another dimension, brother, I am you and you are me. I don't know if that implies to the synthetics. I don't know if that implies to the creation's creation. I know the creator's creations. Yeah, we come from the same wave, right? That's why the creator still, went in on Moab and all these confederacies, because they still are riding against their brothers at the end of the day. Because we're the creator's creations, right? But the synthetics, I don't know if, I'll hold back on that. You know what I'm saying? We're all one and all that stuff. I don't know how two could walk together unless we agree. It's very synthetic of you to, just want to move on, you know what I'm saying, and say, oh, let the past be the past, and the Naga be completely disenfranchised, and let the Naga be completely, without their energy, without their connection, without their vibration, without their gold, without their land, without their things. Let's just move on and let them be in the hood, and now I'll take this identity. I'm an American. That's very synthetic of you. I'm not tripping. I'm just, stating the obvious. I want you to know that. Before you say, oh, we're all one and this one stuff. How can you just jump over all this and be one? What are you talking about? We're at war. We're prisoners of war. It's a frequency war. And we on a war path. And the price is going up.
Awakening. The Bible speaks about the coming of Christ, This is interesting, actually, because Christ is the name of the third level of consciousness.
Oh, boy.
I didn't just make that up. We are moving into Christ consciousness.
Oh, boy.
Which means not that Jesus is going to show up with a big A, but we are actually moving into the level of conscious understanding that Jesus had. It is the coming of Christ through the human species.
Wow. And then they hit you with the hijack, with the Platonic silence, man. You see how they hit us, man? You see how they hit us, man? You see how the hijack does us, man? But we're going to pick off, man. We're going to pick up from right here.
So higher...
We're going to pick up from this point next time, man. You know what I mean? Get out the hijack. That's why I said, you know what I mean? You got to have your defense. You know what I mean? Sometimes offense is your best defense. You know what I mean? Sometimes when you just know how to, you know what I'm saying, stick and move, that's your best defense. You know what I'm saying? So that's all we're doing over here is dodging the hijack at all costs, getting the drop, getting back the Platonic silence. I went over here to take the Platonic silence back from this thoughthisms. You know what I'm saying? That's all they kicking, but we taking the Platonic silence back. I came over here to get the babies out the bathwater. I came over here to get the Moshe out the bathwater, the Platonic silence from sea to sea, right? From sea to shining sea, right? We see clearly. From David to David, we see clearly. This is the octaves. This is the music. This is David's lair, right? Lyre, lair, lyre, lair. He's playing that harp, right? He's playing that lyre, lair. In the dragon lair, playing the lair, man. Popping off these volcanoes because it's popping off. And Yosef the Real told you that. Pop it off, man. Pop it off, man. Y'all keep signing up. We'll pick it up, man. We'll pick it up right here, man. Don't even trip. But just enjoy your flow, enjoy your day, enjoy your night. Know that drop is with you, going through it with you. You know what I'm saying? Overcoming it, inch by inch. But, just know that the dreams you have, the vision you have, man, just to stick with it. This is the time of real, hey, if you made for it, you're going to stick with it. You're going to stick through it. You know what I'm saying? No one has to see you through it. You got it. You got what it takes. Stop waiting on somebody else to call you. Just do it, man. Just be great, man. You know what I'm saying? No one needs to inspire you at this point. Do it, man. Be the inspiration. You be the inspiration. At a time when you feel like not being the inspiration most, at a time when you feel like falling back and saying, fuck it, man. Be the inspiration, man. That changes the whole game. That changes the whole wave pattern, man. It reverses the curse by doing the opposite that you're supposed to do, right? Because you're so depressed, you're so tired, you're so frustrated. By doing the opposite of what they are waiting for us to do, it just completely exposes the synthetic game and the trickery, and you take your power back. You ether up. You get your Platonic silence, man, and you quam. You quam for Hawa. You quam for your ox, your Ahchwas, you know what I'm saying? You quam for your Shabbata. We do it for the Phi. We do it for the Spiral. We do it for Phineas. We do it for all the guardians. You dig? All the dragons on the wall. Ahab to you. I will be doing a lot of updates right now, so I appreciate, man. Y'all are the most patient, you know what I'm saying, tribe, man. Just tribing up with you is truly Baruch. So Baruch to you, Baruch to the Shabbatai, all across the plain, man. All praise our Creator, our eternal, ancient love song, ancient head of days. Ahab to the real ones, man. Shalom.